Hi everyone, my name is Alex Ipatov. I'm international grandmaster in chess and a computer science student. And today I'll be teaming up with a PhD in computer science from Dr. Shiv Shivaji and a FIDE master in chess. And our goal is to help you improve by going over some of our games and sharing our perspective. And I will give word to Dr. Shiv.
Hey guys, so I'm Dr. Shiv. I think Alex has already introduced me briefly. I'm a FIDE master in chess, but more importantly, I also have a PhD in computer science, which allows me to think a little bit about chess and think a bit about the whole learning process and comment on it. So this set of videos are meant to help you improve at chess. They're not like a live stream of a blitz game. It's meant to analyze serious games and help you, on your path to improvement. So we're gonna tag team and hopefully help you improve at your chess too.
Clicking. Yep.
Okay. So as promised, let's go over this game, and I will ask questions from multiple different perspectives, like a beginner perspective, maybe a club level perspective, and also a master perspective.
Sure.
So let's go over this slowly. So you start with, and we can also bring in the computer to analyze when it makes sense. So it looks like you played the English opening in this game. Maybe a few notes on when was this game played, which year?
I think it was played in December 2013 in Bundesliga. Yeah, and it was I think Sunday. Like usually when you go to play weekend in Bundesliga, it's like one game on Saturday, one game on Sunday. So
okay, so
it was
basically
like 7 years
German
ago.
League.
Yeah, German
League. And your opponent, was he much weaker than you? I don't have his.
No, I mean he was also Grandmaster 2550. He was quite a strong Grandmaster, and yeah, I think draw is fine, but with white pieces you can try to put them some fight, and if your opponent equalizes, usually in team events, then the games are more peaceful. But in this game, I managed to put the pressure where I wanted to play for a win from that point on.
Okay, great. So it looks like here it's like a Slav defense. So first question is, did you prepare? And I guess you knew this was part of his repertoire.
I don't remember. It was 7 years ago, but perhaps I checked. Yeah, I think back then I used to prepare for my opponents, and yeah, I knew my opponent in advance. I think I don't remember how this Bundesliga thing was because last time I played it was like 4 or 5 years ago. But I think I prepared, and also this is the line I play. I mean, I think I also prepared another game for today's video, which is also like in this line, like in this Slav is DC4, and then I go for the bishop pair. So yeah, I have experience in this line since early childhood, I would believe, with both colors. Yep.
Okay, great. So yeah, so this is like this. I remember this as being, I think this is called the Dutch defense of the Slav, where the bishop b4 is played, and there used to be also the Spisak line, which used to show up like knight e5 what was that? Knight e5 c5 f3, and
yeah, that was right. That was I think if you go a few moves back, that is like move 6, knight e5, right, instead of e3, I believe.
Oh yeah, knight e5, right, yeah, exactly. Yes, knight instead of e3, you go knight e5, e6, f3,
bishop
c5.
c5. Okay, that isn't this.
No, that's 2 lines. Yeah, sorry. F3, bishop b4. Sorry, c5 is the endgame line. Then there's.
That was like Topal of Anand, I think, right? Like World Championship in Sofia, 2010.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I might be blanking. Yeah, there's line like that, and I don't remember what. I never analyzed it like in deeply. I think I remember a game between Yannick Pelletier and Dragan Cholak, because that game was played next to me. That was European Team Championship in Reykjavik 2015, and I think it was a draw, but Black was winning. I think Dragan had very deep analysis there, but I don't know what evaluation is, what theory is. I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe this is like an extremely complicated line. It's playable, but extremely complicated, and Black is going to be very well prepared. Whereas this is the more solid line.
Exactly. Right. You can just play.
And so knight b to d7. Yeah, knight h4. It's sort of interesting. This knight h4 move is sort of interesting because I think. I'm trying to. Okay, so let's just think from a sort of a beginner perspective here. So the beginner perspective is, at least I feel that white has the center, and actually from a beginner perspective, it looks pretty bad for Black because white has the center, and Black is not really combating the center. So how would you explain this? Let's say from a slightly more like a GM perspective, because from a beginner perspective, it clearly looks like white has the center and black is not able to place pieces in the center. Maybe the idea for black would be to like, put a knight on e4 and contest the center. Yeah, so maybe a few thoughts you can share the position.
So I think that black has two major ideas. As you correctly said, black has less space, less control over the center, so he wants to fight back for that. And I think the major two ideas are to play c5 or e5 and try to get that space back. So this is what black is trying to do, and he either plays e5 or c5 depending on circumstances. And what does white want? White wants to gain even more space in the center by playing like queen e2, e4, or maybe bring rook to d1 and so forth. And there is a lot of theory in that line as well. And this is, so what white's plan is to gain more space and try to prevent black's move c5 or e5, or if not prevent it, try to make them as hard as possible. And queen e2 is a major move, but there's a lot of theory and I expected my opponent knew it. And I played knight h4 because the idea is very, very simple to me. You just want to get the bishop here and you just play from there. And again, I've never been like a theory guy, like opening theory guy. I just try to play common sense moves and try to put practical problems. So of course, knight h4 is not a practical problem. It's still like one of the main lines here, but certainly there is less theory than queen e2. And and again, what is important, the idea is super, super simple. Like I want to get the bishop pair and just try to get a slight advantage and try to play for two results.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, I'm just looking at different things here. So basically the computer here feels like bishop g6 is probably one of the better moves here. And actually, if we focus on bishop g6, I'm actually pretty curious from a computer scientist and looking at when people look at computers seriously for chess preparation, it's basically saying bishop g6 seems like the most solid. And so your opponent actually didn't play. Oh yeah, he ended up playing bishop g6. So we can look at that. And the other thing I remember from this position from a non-computer perspective is I remember a long time ago Garry Kasparov actually thought that one of the novelties in this position was just to simply castle, and which we've also analyzed. So so the idea there was like if you take an f5, ef5, okay, maybe it's important to play those moves, knight f5, ef5. So here at first it looks from a beginner perspective that hey, black is just dead because it looks like there's double their pawns. Black has lost the bishop pair, but these pawns have some sort of like a very funny defensive formation. So the idea is that white can't just grab the center with f3 and e4 because the pawn on f5 is restricting white from very active plans. What's your feeling on this position? Yeah,
a good point. It seems like from the first perspective that like white is much better because of the bishop pair and better pawn structure, but it's not so simple because this pawn f5 is really annoying. It prevents our move e4. And often what white does, white tries to prepare a move e4 by playing f3 first. But playing f3 weakens our pawn center a little bit. And when we play e4, it also weakens the d4 pawn.
Sorry, just on the f3 thing, for a grandmaster, it's obvious. f3 weakens the position. But for lesser lights, it's good to explain a little bit here. f3 weakens the position because, like, I guess when you're trying for e4, then suddenly, you've weakened your dark squares and you've also weakened this diagonal. I just want to confirm that this is why you think it's weakening.
Yeah, it weakens the e3 pawn. And once you played f3, once you said A, you want to say B, that is, you want to play e4. And once you say B, the d4 pawn is sort of like not very well protected. So it leads to a very double-edged position where white has a bishop pair and tries to get like a strong pawn center, but there are some downsides as well. And if black manages to counterattack the pawn on d4, the white position might be found in ruins. Right? So white will lose more than win by playing f3 and e4. However, there's actually an improvement thing. So I don't think that white has to take right away if you see the annotations. So instead of playing knight f5 right away, if I'm not mistaken, there was an interesting game between Ivan Chiparinov and Mustafa Yilmaz, also played in the tournament where I participated. That's why I learned about that game. It was in Reykjavik 2013, I believe, but I might be wrong, where white plays h3 first. And the idea is very interesting. If black plays just some random stuff, let's say rook c8. Yeah, so h3. And I think that was a game.
I think before getting into real advanced territory, I just want to clarify a few things. So if you take on f5 and e5, the play might be better for white, but somewhat forcing, and white has to make committal moves f3 and e4. So the idea of playing h3 and waiting on capturing on f5 is, white can maybe play the same plan at a slower pace. So sort of you get the same risk and reward, or maybe actually no, you're lowering your risk of losing, but you're keeping you're basically maybe making it so that it's lower risk and lower reward. Would that be a fair characterization of H3?
Perhaps, but I think the idea is quite aggressive. I mean, like if we see the game between like Chiparinov and Yilmaz, I mean, White wants to take on F5, play Queen F3, like force move G6, and just blow up the pawn center on the king side with G4. So this move prepares G4, in fact.
Okay, wow, all right. So H3, Rook C8. God, this is why commenting on chess is so difficult. There are all kinds of different ideas. So
Right.
Rook C8, should we look at Bishop G6 or should we just, maybe it's worthwhile just looking at Bishop G6. Let's say Black wants to change the structure of the game. And so.
Yeah, so the Bishop G6 is just a more like solid response, which Black would have played earlier before Castle, for example. And here I believe like we get some nice edge with White, like nothing special, but still it's quite pleasant. I think White can play like 40 results without much risk because we have the bishop pair. And again, if Black plays E5, then our bishop on C4 becomes very active on the A2 G8 diagonal. If Black plays C5, then it sort of weakens B5 square, logs the bishop on B4, and allows again us to play D5. So it's not so easy for Black just to go and play E5. He can, of course, but again, there are some downsides to that because our light squared bishop becomes very powerful. And I like those colorful annotations. That looks very nice.
Yeah, basically each of them shows like a percentage. Essentially 38% means that Black has 38% chance of like, I don't know, scoring, like basically, which means that White is going to score heavily. So if you look at all the percentages, I mean, it's Black to move. It just shows that, White has like a significant advantage in this position. It's not very obvious at first, but I think this is one of those positions where the advantage is significant. This is from White's perspective. White has 60% chance if you play D5 of winning. And I think this is one of those things where, and this is actually baffling to many chess players, especially if you're thinking club level players. But, White has a big advantage in this position, mainly because you have the bishop pair, you have, this clear diagonal. But I think the main reason why White has advantage in this position is not so much of what White has, it's what Black doesn't have. Black doesn't have the bishop pair, Black doesn't have the center. And so even if Black plays actively, the problem is that, the position will open up. And White has even these kind of like weird tactics. Like sometimes you can take on C6, Queen C2, Queen takes C6.
Right, yeah, exactly, great point, yes, yeah.
And this is one of those things where actually Grandmaster, intuition is worthwhile. What do you feel like as a Grandmaster? And I'm just trying to think like, what can an amateur learn from this position that, can help him or her one day become a Grandmaster?
Sure. So again, like my point is very simple. It's just when you have bishop pair, like in most of the cases, you want to open up the position. This is what White is trying to do by playing D5. And you see like why I mean. So after Black played E5 and tried to open the position, it made our like bishop on C4 longer on the A2 G8 diagonal. And so like bishops are very versatile pieces. They can go from one part of the board, let's say from A2, I can go to G8 in one move. Knight cannot do the same. I mean, if I want to move the knight from A2 to G8, it requires a lot of moves, like four, like knight C3, knight E4, knight F6, knight G8. And so, yeah, having two bishops, let's say on D4 and E4 in some hypothetical position, not here, allows us to control like most of the board, like G8, A7 diagonal and B1, H7. So yeah, again, the key point is this: when you have the bishop pair, you try to open the position. When you have the pair of knights, usually you want to keep the position closed because knights are usually, better in close position.
Maybe there's a stupid question in this position. What if Black just plays C5? I know, this is something that, Grandmasters will never consider, but is that an attempt at keeping this position closed, or is that just,
I don't know. I can just say that, like White has a better position. Like he plays for two results, but I'm not sure about the exact plans. Like, the first move that comes to my mind here is D6. Most likely it's just plainly wrong, but that's my intuition. Let's see what your computer thinks. I want to sacrifice. Most likely just a terrible move.
I'm sure the computer. Oh wait, it actually doesn't like D6 as much as. Let's see what's the move. Oh, okay, okay.
It's just play knight B5. But my idea, as a human, I don't want Black to allow Black to play knight E8, knight D6. I don't want him to block. I want to open the position. Of course, D6 is an extreme move that first comes to my mind. I want to open my bishop. During the game, I would make sure that I at least get some compensation. I would not play it like as blindly as I suggested.
No, but it's extremely funny because if you put this Queen D6, computer is saying that White only has a slight advantage. But,
interesting.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if it gives a slight advantage, that means I'm sure all human players will be really scared because White is a pawn down. But if White has a slight advantage, this means it's really probably very uncomfortable to play as Black already.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like our light squared bishop is our best piece, I think. And Black has a lot of weak, two weak squares, like B5 and D5. would be nice if we could maybe bring the knight to d6, like by playing knight b5 and then like move the dark squared bishop somewhere, and then playing knight d6, and then we would increase pressure against the f7 pawn. So as white, I see like ideas clearly. Like I see like my next moves, and for black, I mean, black needs to calculate, not to get into trouble. But perhaps d6 was again a very extreme move. Maybe knight b5 was stronger.
Yeah, this is another trick I've seen of grandmasters or grandmaster intuition. You don't necessarily need to have a big advantage as white. You just have to put your opponent in a position where your opponent has to wait precisely to defend, and that is good enough. You don't even need to strive for something, because here it's sort of weird because the bishop is white's bishop, especially the c4 bishop, is like having a lot of open, basically has open lines, and that itself is enough to scare off people.
Right.
Interestingly, the strongest move it's giving is knight b5. And
yeah, the idea is similar. I think to play d6 just without sacrificing the pawn. So my understanding is
what happens on your
d6.
idea of like let's say knight e4, knight d6.
Here maybe I can. Okay, let's think. So here's a very concrete move. After knight e8 would be much simpler. After knight e8, I would just play d6 right away. After knight e4, my bishop is
a good point. Yeah, let's look at that.
Yeah, so I will just play d6, like to take, because knight d6 take and bishop b4.
Oh yeah, that's actually worthwhile discussing. You cannot take on d6 because if you take, queen takes, bishop takes b4, and rook attacks the queen, and so white's basically pieced up. I mean, and black can't do this and hope that there's a pin. Besides taking the knight, you can even just move the bishop, so there's nothing here.
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting in this position, the thought process which I find fascinating is, it's like a secret in chess. It looks like, because you want to play d6, and that's why Alex's first reaction was to play d6. But then, as the computer is pointing out, it's good to have an improving move like knight b5 with the idea of d6. So the key idea is still d6, but you want to improve it, and that's enough to get a big advantage in this position.
Also, like bishop e1. Also, like bishop e1 move instead of knight b5, because knight b5, like I look at the computer's suggestion, like bishop d2, rook d2, knight e4. It actually allows black to create a blockade on d6, and like I'm not happy about that as a human. Like I want to get active play, but perhaps it's because I'm a dynamic player. Some strategical player would be happy with that, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm focusing on bishop e1 now. So let's say, bishop e1, and now the computer, what does it say? I don't know.
My next move is d6.
Yeah, I just think two moves, 4 and bishop takes c3. For me, bishop takes c3. Yeah, it looks like for me the e4 is the only serious move in this position. And and then now you can just play for d6. And I think the point is you stop the counterplay with knight e4. So I think it's one of those positions where white has the two bishops at like a safe advantage. So it's okay to play for d6. And improvement was to play it in a way that it does not sacrifice a pawn by preparing it. Okay, interesting. Yeah, and obviously people playing this line as white should know this kind of position really well.
Yeah, I've been a d4 player for my entire life. So I'm more comfortable in this type of position than after the first move e4. Right. And if you go back to this, like a game Cheparinov against Yilmaz, it's quite interesting. Yeah, because white goes for a different plan. It was h3 move after castle. So knight h4, castle h3.
Correct, yes. Okay, so here. And I'll stop the computer annotations. Okay.
Yeah, so let's say black plays some like random move like rook c8, which is a bit slow. Black prepares c5, but for now there is no threat. So white can take advantage of this slow move by taking on f5, I think.
Yeah. f5 and
when f3.
Yeah, for me, queen f3 is so obvious. It's funny that the computer actually likes bishop d2, and but yeah, for me, I would prefer queen f3.
g6 and g4. Yeah, the human idea is to open up the position. Again, we have the bishop pair, so we want to get rid of this f5 pawn, playing maybe king g2, g5, like rook h1, knight e4, and just start attacking.
Because if I look at it from a different angle, if I look at it from a club player angle, this move looks very committal and dangerous because it looks like somehow you're playing for g4, which, yeah. So this is actually one of the secrets of chess improvement. Sometimes, a plan that looks pretty aggressive and maybe committal, you have to understand when the same plan is, safe and natural versus when it's dangerous.
I mean, also we shouldn't forget that this was a preparation by Ivan Cheparinov. He's like one of the strongest, one of the best like opening theoreticians in the world. Like he helped Veselin Topalov in his like world championship matches. I mean, so I think he knew what he was doing. So he knew that this move passed, got computers like approval. I mean, otherwise, of course, I agree that this move is super committal. You shouldn't open your king like that. I mean, if you're not like sure about the consequences.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because when I look at it, it doesn't look extremely risky because there's no like chance of like, I don't know, for instance, you can't take and bring this knight to e5, you can't bring it to c5. So from that perspective, it looks okay. But I think the question is, what happens? Can black play c5 and open up the position? Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe this is one of those positions where, in fact, can black try c5 right away, or I guess taking makes more sense here.
I know, position is very dynamic. It's, yeah.
Yeah, because c5 is sort of interesting because what if we capture what happens in this
CD4?
position?
I think we're just losing a piece.
Oh, actually, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you can't even, so c5, you cannot play gf5. Okay, so this is already, so white has to play move like bishop b3 or something because he has to, okay, this is actually an important thing you have to guard against. Actually, this is a good illustration. So c takes d4. Now the rook is attacked by the bishop's attacked by the rook, and the pawn also attacks the knight. So white is lost. So white has to like, make a preparatory move like bishop b3. And the question is like, is this justified or not? That's a big question.
I don't know. Again, position is very dynamic. Like, I can understand from white's perspective. Like we want to open up the position. We have the bishop pair, but we're taking risks. From black's perspective, I understand that we want to take advantage of what white is doing because now the white king is more exposed. I mean, so like since I have more experience with white in this pawn structure, I'd prefer to play white, but I understand that it's a bit risky. So if we do something wrong, we might just end up in trouble.
Yeah, it's funny that the computer thinks that if you play queen b6, it's totally good. It's fine for black and it's about equal. And this is something where maybe putting in cloud engines might change the evaluation. Maybe perhaps even significantly.
Of course.
Yeah, because this line is just crazy to me at least because because I guess why this is crazy to me is a few moves ago you said no, you want to take it, you want to be careful, you don't want to create double-edged position, and here we are exactly playing for a double-edged position where it's not fully clear if white has taken too much risk or not. But I guess this is something I guess people analyze a lot at home deeply and figure out what the key plans are. Right. Yeah, just a question on that. Since as a grandmaster, is this the kind of position where you would spend like a day analyzing?
Perhaps other grandmasters would do. Again, like I've never been like very deep into opening theory, so no. This is I would just play it. Although it depends. Again, like there's some lines that I analyze like for one day or longer, but most of the positions I just try to play. I would come and play with my fresh mind and try to think. Yeah, so I like the practical aspect of chess.
Great. So let's go back. So basically, there's a very dangerous plan here to play h3, and if after knight if he castles, after knight h4, if he castles, then there's a plan that instead of taking immediately on f5, you could play h3. Maybe let's go back to the game continuation. The game continuation is bishop g6, right?
Yeah, immediately before castle, I believe, right? Yeah,
before castling, yeah. This seems like a lot more. At least to me, it feels a bit more solid because if somebody does capture on g6, you can capture back with h pawn, and it feels somewhat more predictable.
Right. But also the thing is that yes.
Well, please go ahead.
So if we take right now, the black hasn't castled yet, so h file becomes open, so black potentially can castle long and try to create counterplay on the king side. So now it also might get double-edged if we take on g6. So now g6, h6, and black wants to play queen c7 and attack the pawn on h2. If we play h3, maybe he has ideas like g5 and g4. So
maybe it's worthwhile like just showing that. So hg6. So let's say.
I think it's what happened in the game. So we can let's say we play something like this. Black maybe plays queen c7.
Yeah, queen c7 with the idea of g5, g4, with the idea that if he does h takes g4, queen h2 is mate.
Right.
So here, it's sort of interesting where, I mean, for me at the beginning, I thought I could just play e4, but I mean, for me, it feels like e4 is a good move, but the problem is black doesn't have to play g5 right away, which might lose a pawn, but black can just castle long and attack on the h file slowly.
Perhaps, but if you play e5, knight e4, I think white is just much better. So again, I'm not scared because I remember that like usually we can stop this idea. There is actually a more dangerous idea for black. If I go back after knight h4, I played again, I think against Melik Hachian. He played bishop g4 instead of bishop g6, bishop g4. I think black wants to provoke move f3. Yeah, so bishop g4 here, f3, bishop h5, g4. And I believe g5 here, right? If I'm not mistaken. Knight f5, and there is a lot of not theory, but white has to be careful.
this is one of those positions where the computers can have a lot of fun playing as white, but for a human, it's really scary because
Yeah. So when he played that
his
very
position
fast, I
is
was a
wide
bit
open.
scared. Yeah.
Yeah, so it feels natural to try to move your knight back to g2. The computer is showing that gh5 is playable, and so is knight f5, but it just feels extremely scary. So did it happen knight g2, or what happened in the game? Or,
I think I played knight f5, but I think, yeah.
Oh, knight f5, wow, okay.
I think I knew positional to them, but then I ran out of theory, and that was not so obvious over the board. So again, typical example when you just analyze with the computer, and then your opponent plays some move of the book, and you have no clue what to do next. So I don't remember, but something like that: bishop g6, e4, maybe h6. Yeah, I don't remember. It was like many years ago.
Oh my God, this is like a crazy, fantastic,
I don't remember. Maybe not
looking
h6,
position.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy position because I guess the point is that instead of h6, if you take with the e pawn and you get the bishop back. And it's interesting. The computer, that's actually very funny that the computer is not that impressed. But overall, I mean, it just feels risky for white. I mean, the computer thinks, okay, big deal. I mean, white has a very slight advantage. But the problem is, like, for most human players, it just feels scary with the king still sort of exposed on g1.
Right.
Okay, so maybe we can go back to the game. Sorry, what happened in the game? So knight
bishop
h4,
g6.
bishop g6.
I think I took. Yeah.
Yeah, you
and h3. I played h3. Yeah, I played this prophylactical move. Yeah, just to prevent queen c7 with a tempo. And yeah, now black has to decide what to do.
So g3. Okay, this is sorry, h3. So this is one of those positions where, okay, I'm trying to evaluate it myself. Yeah, it's interesting again from a perspective of a club player. It looks like white is better because white has the two bishops, black has double pawns, and no idea what black is playing for. For maybe a slightly more sophisticated player, maybe the problem is that white's plan is also not that clear. I mean, could e4, e5 be white's plan? I mean,
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think if black allows, it would be very nice to play e4, e5, and then knight e4, perhaps bishop g5. Yeah. Well, of course, there is a downside of doing this as well because it gives the d5 square away to the black knight. But I think that advantages of this idea are bigger than disadvantages. I mean, I'm talking about the e4, e5, knight e4 idea. So we give up the d5 square, but we get maybe control of d6 potentially. We have ideas like bishop g5 down the road, and we take more space in the center. But I remember that if black plays g5 here.
If black plays g5 here, okay.
I think we have e4. If I'm not mistaken, again, it's been like a while since I saw this file myself last time. Like g4 and white plays e5 or something like that. So I think that's a response. If black tries just to open the h file just like that, we shouldn't be scared. Yeah. So we play e4. And he can take bishop c3 perhaps, which is something similar to what could have happened in the game. So just go and grab the central pawn.
Oh yeah, it looks to me that this is like an extra pawn for black, but looks like there's a lot of counterplay for white, like bishop e3.
Yeah, maybe rook e1, just maybe some sacrifice on e6 later, right?
Oh wow, okay, yeah, rook e1. Yeah, this looks scary because if you take on c3, there's queen b3, or maybe there's even other moves.
Yeah, something like that. Again, maybe computer will just laugh at us, but from human perspective, this is a position I would go to. I mean, right? So the computer thinks black is doing fine, as you see. So maybe it was something, some other like move order.
No. The computer thinks that computer thinks black is bad. It thinks 40%.
40%. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah. So meaning that white has 60% chance of winning. Yeah, it's confusing with some of these neural net engines, but essentially, yeah, it looks like. Yeah, this is one of those.
I see.
One of the things I found actually with computers getting stronger is they start to realize these kind of positions pretty quickly. So they tend to, let's just say, agree with human intuition. So the computers are less likely going to grab pawns like this in the center. See, if you look here, already it thinks that this is only 30% chance for black to win and 70% for white. So it doesn't even appreciate this whole maneuver.
Right.
Capture pawn. That's how computers have become. But yeah, it's good to see a practical illustration of the same. So one question in this position, which I'm actually confused by now because I don't play either side of this. What I'm confused about is it seems like white has a clear advantage here in this structure. So what would black players play for in this position?
So what he played was very, very reasonable, and then I had to think what to do. So he played move a5. He just secured control over the b4 square. And then what does he want to do? He can go for a short castle and just play that position. Again, black's position is very, very solid. But again, I like white's position because of the bishop pair and control over the center. So this is something like black can do. Or maybe he can keep his like hands open, maybe not castle short, maybe play some useful moves first, queen c7, and eventually go for long castle. Like, again, it depends. And then try to again to create that counterplay with g5, g4. Or maybe try to play something like e5. And again, maybe keep king in the center first and then castle long or short, because black is just one move away from castling if he plays like queen c7, queen e7. So usually it's not a good idea to open up the center when your king is in, yeah, usually it's not a good idea to open the center when your king is in the center. But here the thing is that black is just one move away from castling, so it's not a big deal for him. So he might just play e5 and then respond based on how white responds. So I don't know. From human perspective, I like this position and I'm ready to play it even nowadays without any opening theory. I just try to, I just play like using intuition, and I think white is better from the human perspective, but computer might disagree. I don't know. I don't know what computer thinks here. What do you think?
Actually, it's a good exercise. I would assume that nowadays engines, they like the two bishops, so they would probably give a slight advantage to white, but let's see what it says. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe it's not a substantial advantage, it's giving 50.
But I'm happy that, I mean, what computer shows is the line that I played, and it's a commitment during the game. You play e4, you sacrifice the pawn. So during the game, again, I was out of book already. I played when I played knight h4 in the beginning, I was pretty much out of book already there. I just played based on ideas. So when we reached this position, I had a dilemma to play e4 or try to play more slowly. And I decided to play e4 because it seemed like a principled continuation. Like, my king is safe. I have the bishop here. I control the center. My opponent's king is in the center, so I must attack. I think the first world champion, Wilhelm Steinitz, he said, if you have an advantage, you have to attack. Otherwise, you will lose your advantage. So this is how I thought here. And eventually I played e4. Although I admit I didn't see a win or anything or even advantage. I just went with the feeling. And we have also to think from black's perspective, because when white plays e4, you don't have an engine. You have to think on your own. Like, your king is in the center, white has a bishop here, so it's easier for your opponent to play. So do you take there and have to find concrete moves after that to make sure you don't lose, or just don't take, but then white's position seems better? So there is practical aspect of playing e4 as well. And it's even better to play it fast with a confident look and just make your opponent think whether it's preparation or not.
No, it's funny. I was about to say that that confident look is more useful for pre-COVID times.
Right, not now. Right. Nowadays, yeah.
Confident mouse click.
Yep.
So I do have a question. Like, e4 seems committal, seems like an advantage. But the question is, if white has like a bishop pair in this position and a strategic advantage because of black's double pawn, why does white need to rush?
Good point. Maybe black wants to play something like, again, e5, take on d4, let's say ed4, and then play knight b6, knight d5, and block the isolated pawn. And again, black's position will be very, very solid. So, or play queen e7, then e5, I'm not sure. But the typical pawn structure that arises from here is black playing e5, taking on d4, and then playing knight b6, knight d5, and blocking the isolated pawn. So I didn't want to play that long game. Actually,
it's a good point. So let's say here, and I don't know why the computer is looking at f4 here, but
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Let's put in a normal move like rook d1.
I presume queen somewhere. Yeah, queen e7. No, right, so it doesn't give much to white. That's surprising, right? So it just says like it's about equal.
Yeah, it's about equal, and in fact, right now it's even thinking that it's. I'm so confused. Yeah, basically it's even giving some moves which it thinks that white will be slightly worse after bishop b3 or something. But yeah, so essentially, so I think the computer is not strategically impressed by white's position, and so it's sort of banking it's banking on the fact that white has to go has to play tactical ideas quickly. For me, it's not obvious, because I would assume actually none of these moves make sense to me. I guess the point is you can't play d5 because of bishop takes c3. So I see. So this actually is preparing d5. That's what it is.
Right.
Yeah, and then if you do bishop takes c3, there's d6, for instance.
Good point. Yeah.
But actually, you could have done it last move too. I don't know. It's one of those. There are a bunch of subtleties here. But I think the biggest question is, why is this position here? Let's say e takes d4. Oh, I see. If you play e takes d4, and if it
and we get the position, yes, we get the pawn structure I was talking about. Yeah, not talking about this concrete position. Knight b6, knight d5. It's very hard to break through. And again, most likely just about equal. I know. Although I was still prepared to play with white pieces, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah.
It's sort of interesting because I was about a castle, but then I realized that f7 could potentially be hanging because of the bishop. So anyway, so I think this is an interesting recap. So I think one of the things that's fascinating me so far, even during the discourse of this video, is understanding when it's you need to rush and when you need to slow down. And it's funny because this same position, white decided at the beginning white doesn't want to rush, but then suddenly you're deciding that you want to rush after black plays a solid move like a5. So it's almost like the more solid black is, the more the more white feels the desire to rush forward.
Perhaps, yeah, but again, chess is a very complex game. It depends also on like how much time your opponent spent on a5, what is his style based on like researching his games in mega database, based on his body language, for example. So if you feel that he's not very comfortable, confident, you would want to play more aggressively and maybe also look more aggressive or confident in yourself. So I don't remember like that game. It was like 7 years ago, but yeah. So those are also some considerations, not only chess considerations, but also like psychological factors.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think like a lot of people feel that, chess is just like sort of an intelligent game where you just work out things on the board. You don't ever look at the opponent until the end of the game. But no, actually, strong players, I've noticed, they often look at the opponent. In fact, Kasparov was known for making grimaces at the opponent and trying to figure out what the opponent is after, and that's a huge part of the game. And not only Kasparov, Emmanuel Lasker, a lot of strong players, they play the opponent. They don't actually just play the position, because if your opponent is scared in this position as black, well, you can be aggressive, and there's a good chance your opponent will not actually fight back, because there might be fear in their eyes.
Right, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Again, chess is a practical game, and most people forget that. They think that just studying opening theory is enough to become a strong player. That's not true. There's so many factors. Even good sleep, or just like having a clear mind, like fresh mind. I mean, we're not worrying about anything can influence it's something like a decisive move on the fourth on fifth hour of the game. I mean, which may influence the tournament, and even maybe more than that. So yes.
Actually, speaking of which. I had a strong grandmaster whose name I don't want to reveal, on this program, because then people will start feeling strange about this player. He strongly believed in biorhythms, and he believed, certain biological rhythms allowed him to have a peak performance. Do you have any opinion on that?
And more specifically, biorhythms, like what do you mean by that?
Biorhythms. Okay, so he actually believed that his biological cycle was influenced by rhythms, and there's like a pattern to the rhythms. And for instance, he might even feel like, based on biorhythms, for instance, the day that you played this game, it shows that you're very you're basically having like good biorhythms. It means that he could play more risky as well. And
I don't know. That's perhaps. I mean, from my side, I can say that I'm not sure that if this talks about biorhythms, but I can say it about, like, let's say, sleeping schedule. I mean, like a very, very simple version of that. So if I have to play in the morning, and I think most chess players are this way, we cannot play at 9 or 10 o'clock. This is normal for most of the people who go to work from 9 to 5, and they're most productive in the morning time. Chess players are very bad in the morning time. In fact, they just hate playing in the morning. So they tend to sleep until like 1 or 2 p.m. I know a couple of players who sleep until that time, and sometimes including myself. We wake up for lunch and we go to the game at 3 o'clock. So 3 to 4 o'clock is like the normal time where the games should start. So yeah, maybe does it like sort of like answer your question about biorhythms? It's like about sleeping schedule. I mean, but not sure.
I think that's actually a more maybe pragmatic answer, because I think there was some people who believe, but it's related in the sense that you feel that 3, 4 p.m. is when you're sort of getting your creative, how to say it, like your creative energy is maximized around that time, and you feel that you could sort of play better chess at 3 p.m.
Also, I mean, most chess players, they study at night. They prepare for their opponent until morning, and then like if they have to wake up at 9 o'clock, they're just counterproductive. I mean, like you cannot play without sleep. I mean, and so it's great that most tournaments, like most games, begin at 3 p.m. and most of the like normal tournaments, right? And yeah, so players can prepare until midnight or like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and then wake up at 1 p.m. and still get enough sleep and have a fresh mind. I mean. But not always. Like there are a lot of tournaments, like I think in the United States, where you have to play all the entire tournament in 2-3 days, and you have like multiple rounds per day. And of course, this affects the quality of the game. It affects your tournament strategy. So you try to be pragmatic. You just try to maximize the number of points scored. So sometimes you just don't maybe don't play creative chess. You play like again pragmatic chess. I think Alexander Shabalov wrote a book on the strategies for open tournaments, and he's a great like open tournament player, and not only open tournament, but he's like he achieved a lot of successes in open events in the United States. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So where we were?
Great. Yeah. So we were. Now you played e4. You went for it, and I think we were just there. So let's see. Your opponent looks like your opponent played e5.
It feels like we'll spend like 2 hours on just this game. I mean, maybe we can go faster with this game because it's like not a very special game. It's about just bishop pair.
I'm trying to capture all the questions that people want to know so that they can maximize their chance of chess improvement. But I'll go on more chess notes. So so very quickly, it looks like your opponent. Let's just go over what feels like a critical line. So if you take and then you take basically this is just grabbing a pawn. What's your feeling about these positions? Because I've seen a similar position, and so I have some thoughts. I mean, but overall, do you feel that white just has a big advantage here?
No, I don't think about advantage. I have actually no opinion. I just think like it's just easier to play with white to create threats. You have ideas like later down the road to play bishop a3 and prevent short castle. And so in order to castle, black will have to either close the diagonal by playing c5 or somehow like try to play knight d6 and short castle, or make a long castle. But if he makes long castle, then the b file is already open. So clearly white already has like compensation. So according to my all the analysis, I think black somehow equalizes here, but maybe with new engines, this is maybe just not true. Maybe white is just objectively better. So I might be wrong.
Yeah, queen e1.
This is actually queen e1 is not the move that I analyzed. So I think it was like rook e1 or bishop a3. So perhaps queen e1 is just a stronger move that was not like suggested by the old stockfish.
Rook e1. So I'm slightly confused here. Is it queen e1 or rook e1? Yeah, I guess it's giving both. We can ask it to focus on rook e1 because that seems more critical. So rook e1, knight df6. I guess the problem is if you go back, there's some. Oh, I see. Just bishop a3, and black is just like paralyzed. There's no clear move.
Right, and we can also see this line like knight c3 instead of knight f6, just to show the line where black wins 2 pawns.
Oh yeah.
And white doesn't have any like immediate threats. I think like queen b3, knight d5. Yeah, and just the computer says it's just so terrible for like just take and bishop a3, right? And again, there is like no immediate threat, but it's just so unpleasant to play with black. Like there is no way to bring your king to safety. And yeah, it just looks terrible.
Well, I mean, for me, the first question is why would you even take the bishop? Why can't you just play bishop a3? But maybe the problem is bishop a3 is no knight b4.
Knight b4. Yeah.
Knight b4 blocking. Okay, so you're giving up the pawn, but on the other hand, you're trading off the more important bishop. So the idea is that you take cd and then bishop a3. Yeah, this is another thing that I've seen. Like one of the secrets of chess is to basically decide when to trade and when not to trade. And at the beginning, a club a club player and maybe even stronger players might feel that, hey, I have the 2 bishops, why should I give it up? And I think one of the key things here is the 2 bishops are strong or a bishop rather is strong because it can trade itself for a knight anytime. So you should actually think about when you can make a trade as opposed to thinking, oh, my bishop is stronger than knight, I'm never going to trade.
Yeah, there is a famous game, I think, between Bobby Fischer and Tigran Petrosian. There was move knight d7 in their match, I think in 1971 in Buenos Aires. So where white seemingly had a strong knight on c5 and black had a bad bishop on d7. But nevertheless, Fischer traded good knight for the bad bishop. It was like transformation of the advantage, but it was the other way around. It was like good knight versus bad bishop. Here it's different. Here's good bishop versus like knight. But yeah, anyways.
That's a good point. I think that's a great example, and we can maybe go over that example some other time. But I think it again shows that when you have an advantage, it's fine to trade. And in fact, strong players always think about trading the advantage. It's almost as if strong players will never accept like an equal bank statement. They always want to keep making trades to get the advantage, and this is something that I've seen time in and time out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so basically taking the pawns is too dangerous because white just has a strong initiative. And so your opponent played e5 in this position.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now that I played e4, e5 already hits the d4 pawns. So now I don't have pawn e3 to protect it that well. So black wants to create pressure on my dark squares because by playing e3, I sort of weakened like my pawn dark square on d4.
Worthwhile pointing out. So in this position, e5 is not that great a move for black, but white makes this one harmless looking move e4. trying to take the center, and now black plays e5. And suddenly this is actually quite painful for white, because black is actually attacking this pawn, and it can't be protected by a pawn. And I don't know how to say. This is one of those things where I'm trying to explain a feeling, and Alex, he might be successful in explaining his feeling, but it's just that e5 is a much stronger move for black now, because it requires white to sort of defend d4 with a piece. And I don't know, Alex, if I'm trying to set it right, but I think I'm trying to say that it's a big trade-off, and this is one of those things where it's hard to appreciate unless you basically have a feeling for these positions.
Perhaps, yeah. Again, perhaps it'll be harder for players to play e4 in the first move to understand this pawn structure. Again, for me, I've been playing this let's say for 20 years already, perhaps. So I'm a bit more aware of some pitfalls. I have to be careful when I play a move like e4 to make sure that my pawn on d4 is not weak. And we'll come back to that in the next game, which is also on the bishop pair and in the same line with knight h4 and the same line with the Slav, right? So yeah, we'll see more examples of this idea when white plays e4 and black wants to strike back with e5 or c5. Okay, so yeah, let's see what happened in the game after that. So it was d5. And again, it seems like why would I play d5 and close my bishop? But more logical is to play something like d5 perhaps and try to keep the position open. But I don't remember why I didn't play it. Perhaps black gets some, and bishop e2, right? And ready to play this position. And black just plays queen e7. Okay, and maybe rook d8 later.
Yeah, this is one of those positions where at least it feels to me that white has lost some of the advantage, because now black has a strong knight on e5. Maybe in the long term, white is still maybe slightly better, but it feels like compared to a few moves ago, why would you allow this knight to come to e5? All things being equal, it feels like this is a bad plan to play e4 and let the black knight come to e5. So I think that's probably why you're deciding to play b5 and not allow the black knight to be active for now. And again, This is one of those positions where these nuances matter a lot. And this is what I found fascinating about chess, because when I was looking at this position from the perspective as a FIDE master to somebody, who was interested in computers, to somebody who, basically from the GM perspective, I'm starting to realize more and more that these small nuances make a huge difference. So you can't just rush, you can't rush your way. So one of the things I've learned is you can't rush your way as white. You have to slowly and carefully come out with that plan that is going to give black the greatest chance of suffering. And this is one of those things where if you don't have killer instinct, you may not appreciate it, but you have to really try to see what are the nuances you can bring into this position so that black will be worse. And I think the other thing that I'm realizing in this position is experience matters. So in both for both black and white, the player with more experience knows what are the kind of things you can throw at the other player and cause sort of the most stress.
Yep, good point. Right. And here is also an interesting moment. I see that again. Last time I saw this game was a while ago. So after knight b6, I played a move that doesn't seem so logical, like bishop d3. So why would white move the bishop away from the a2 g8 diagonal? And I guess there was some concrete reason to that. So if more logical, it seems like to play bishop b3 or bishop a2 and preserve the bishop on the diagonal. But I think I was worried that black would either go and take that pawn. So let's say we play bishop, whatever line is analyzed there, like bishop b3, let's say. I think the game is partially analyzed. Bishop a2, I think, is analyzed. Yeah, bishop a2. Let's say bishop a2 is analyzed. Yeah, see, yeah. And black plays cd5, ed5, castle, and yeah, we play bishop e3, just a logical developing move. Black plays, he takes. And
for me, taking feels counterintuitive, but okay.
But the line is very concrete. Now, if we take back, black wins the pawn on d5, and if we take on b6, then there is danger we might get into worse position because our bishop would be just bad, and black will block us on dark squares. Let's say knight on d6, queen on c5. I think black is just better there because our bishop is bad, black knight is good.
Yeah, actually, this is worthwhile just adding a move or two more. Say queen c2, knight d6. So I think this position is sort of interesting. It's better for black because this bishop is restricted by the pawn on d5. And yeah, there's a rule in these positions, at least I'll give the simple version of the rule, that you do not place pawns of the same color as your bishop if you have only if you have like one bishop left, because now it looks like, this bishop has become like a gigantic pawn. I can't go here,
Right.
can't go here. And one active plan of playing c4 makes his bishop even worse. You've sort of stifled your own bishop. So far from white having an advantage, black might actually be having an advantage in this position.
Right. So
but what is so annoying? What is
yes.
so annoying from a perspective of somebody looking at this game and not looking at this? I'm not playing either side of this opening. Is you played a bunch of natural moves and you make maybe perhaps one misstep, and suddenly a few moves later, black is better.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we played some aggressive moves. We played e4 and d5, and maybe again some misstep was maybe not bishop a2. Perhaps we are not worse. Again, that line was just to illustrate the potential danger of our position. I think after bishop a2 and cd5, white cannot be worse. Maybe we can take knight d5 or maybe ed5 and not bishop e3, but something else. Yeah. So that was just a line for illustration.
Okay, it's a funny reminder that even if you played well and you play aggressive moves, you always have to be on alert, because if you play a bunch of nonchalant moves, suddenly black is better. But the other thing I'm seeing here is that you had an aggressive plan. Maybe the logical way to play it is if there's an aggressive plan, you must keep following up aggressively. And from that perspective, bishop d3 makes more sense, because you're sacrificing the d5 pawn, but you're keeping your bishop on the center of the board, so where you can have more aggressive possibilities.
Yeah, so by playing this move, I don't allow black just to get play ed5 and block my pawn or win it after that, because after cd5, I will play bishop d5 check and black will be unable to castle. And if he doesn't take,
that's actually a great tactical point, bishop b5 check. So essentially, in a way, you're stopping c takes d5.
Yeah, and if he doesn't take, if he plays castle, then I'll play bc6, and I'll have better pawn structure. And again, if black brings the knight to d4, maybe he's not worse at all, because d4 is a weak square. I mean, black wants to bring his knight to d4. Maybe let's say like knight d7, knight c5, knight e6, knight d4. Let's say just some maneuver that comes to mind. But for now, it seems like his knights are not very well placed. Knight on b6 is out of play. Knight on f6 is out of play. So by playing bishop e3, I think we are slightly better. Maybe we can play bishop on c4, queen into rook d1, rook c1. Again, bishop pair and better pawn structure. And we can play.
Yeah, and also, it's interesting because another thing I've noticed is that chess players really are able to think very quickly how to move their knights. Because, can you imagine that if we didn't say it, the goal for black is to bring this b6 knight all the way to d4, and the route is d7, c5, e6, d4. That's like 1, 2, 3, 4 moves to get into the square. But chess players naturally, strong chess players are glued to finding a better square for the knight, because this is sort of their ideal square. And of course, the problem in this position, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 moves to come here. And in those 4 moves, white has many counter plans. But it's quite natural for players to look for good squares for the knight. And this funny position, I don't think this f6 knight can go to d4. There is technically a plan f6, knight d7, knight c5, knight e6, knight d4. But it feels so unnatural because the knight on b6 is not well developed, not doing much. Knight on f6 is somewhat better placed. So it doesn't make sense for you to move a better placed knight all the way to d4.
Perhaps, but on the other hand, I'm not sure whether this knight was so well placed in f6. Very often in Rui Lopez, we see knight from f6 move to d7 and then somewhere else. And I think we will have a game on positional sacrifice, and there I'll show a couple of games with knight d7 idea in Rui Lopez. So not always knight on f6 is such a good piece, although it seems like it's placed well. After all, it controls the center, like squares d5 and e4. But yeah, so perhaps knight d7, knight c5 is not so silly.
Yeah, that's a very good point. A lot of people believe that the knight's go well placed in f6, but I think a lot of GMs have pointed out to me that why do you think this knight is good? Because it's restricted by this pawn, can't go there, and so there's not much scope for this knight. It looks well placed, but it's not.
Actually, I like knight d7. Like in Rui Lopez, from Black's perspective, I really like move knight f7 d6. Just like that move, to maneuver to a different place or prepare move f5. Not talking about this position, but just here, Black certainly doesn't want to play f5 because it would just weaken the a2j diagonal and expose the black king. Yeah, so we'll see that in future games, right?
Right. No, so that's a good point. Yes.
So here, so he played cd5. So he decided to take the challenge. He didn't want to maybe have a slightly worse position.
Yeah. So after d5, he didn't castle. He because I think just quick recap: if he castles dc6, bc6. Bishop e3, for instance, and white is still better, and black's
without risk. White is just playing without risk.
Yeah, that's actually another interesting point. I've seen with strong players, they often just look for aiming for a position where they have an advantage without the risk. And so this is something that's an interesting concept. But looks like, if you have a position where you can play for an advantage and there's not too much danger, that is much preferred to a position where you might even have better chances to win, but there's a higher chance of losing. And
Right.
sort of, I feel like strong players, at least I've seen this theme, is you want to stabilize and have a chance to hold your position, hold your advantage, rather than going into very risky waters where you have a chance of losing. So it almost feels like you just don't want a chance to lose, or you want to lower your chance to lose, because I guess having a safe advantage is like a dream for many players or strong players. That
Yes, on higher level, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for me it was counterintuitive, because a long time ago I felt this was counterintuitive, because I always thought, hey, isn't it better to get risky moves and scare your opponent more? But it turns out that that's not the right way to do it, because you'll end up scaring yourself more. And the key thing is not to allow counterplay in these positions.
It depends on the player, on the style, of course. And also, if you play with white pieces, I mean, at least my perception that you want to get this play for 2 results. When you play with black pieces, you don't want to play solid, because then white will always be pressing for an advantage. I mean, so when I'm playing with black pieces, I try to destabilize matters and try to take my opponent out of comfort zone. And often I play like very weird openings like e4, p6, or like c6, knight a6. And of course, white is better in those positions, but at least he's out of book. And there I try to be aggressive. I mean, so my perception again is try to be more solid with white pieces, if it's possible. Of course, depends on the position, and try to be more aggressive with black, trying to challenge this thinking that white plays for 2 results. So I want to get the game for 3 results. I also want to win with black pieces. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny, because it's sort of different from the way I play. Maybe that's why I'm not a grandmaster yet, but I sometimes play more risky with white as well, and that's later.
Yeah, it depends on the player. Just again, it allows for creativity. I mean, you can play e4, d4, c4, any move. I mean, right? So, and the people are different, so that's what makes this game exciting. Okay, so
anyway,
what happened again?
Yeah, 6 c5.
Yep.
Now
and of course, now check is mandatory, otherwise black will castle.
Yep. And here it's sort of interesting. Like, he played king f8. Okay, so I guess he just didn't want to expose himself to any more pins. And also,
then with knight d5, I'll have a even better position.
Oh, yeah,
material will be equal, and yeah. So king f8 at least wins the pawn for black. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. So he gets a pawn. So knight d5, knight takes d5. Yeah. Then here knight takes d5, and I guess he wants to stop your bishop from coming to e3.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So here actually black's a pawn up.
Yep.
And so for me, without ever seeing this position before, I would say queen f3 and rook d1 makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Good point. This was This, I think what I tried to do. What do we want to do from white's perspective? We want to bring our remaining pieces into the game, because for now nothing is developed. And by playing queen f3, we bring the queen to a good square, because it creates some pressure on the knight on d5, on pawn on b7, on pawn on f7, and liberates d1 square for the rook. And I mean, actually, rook d1 is a tactical threat. We want to win the knight on d5.
Yeah, actually, the other problem now I see is if the knight moves, b7 is hanging too. So in a way, now I'm starting to realize that the fact that black is up a pawn only matters for accountants. It doesn't look very promising for black at all.
Yeah, black has to give the pawn back, I think, right? Mm-hmm.
Black has to give the pawn back. Okay.
Most likely. Maybe there is some way not to do that, but I think, I don't see actually the way not to give the pawn back, because rook d1 is such a big threat.
Yeah, the other thing that is, I guess, obvious to people is this rook is out of the game, and the king is also sort of out of the game, because if this rook can somehow, you spend a tempo on
rook h4, maybe rook h4. Yeah, rook h4 you can play. So that's one way.
Yeah, with the idea of bringing it to here. Yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea, because now if rook d1, there's rook d4.
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah, rook d1, rook d4, actually, yeah. And then suddenly, I mean, I don't know objectively what's the evaluation of this move, but at least, you've got the rook back from the dead.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, actually, we should pay attention to this suddenly. Well, I can almost bet your opponent did not play rook d1, rook h4.
He played e4 first, if I'm not. Yeah. But,
mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I'm really curious what happens in this position if you play rook h4. Oh, white is giving the computer gives a 65%.
Yeah, we win the pawn back. That's the line I thought. Yeah. We just win the pawn back with bishop c4 queen b7.
Oh, just play bishop c4. I see. So the idea is that so knight, essentially here it's interesting if black was a stupid move or let's just say plays unprepared move like knight b6, unfortunately there's checkmate right here. And at least we can also test as the software is working, it says 100%.
Right.
And so now, but if the knight goes to f6, you can take on b7, and yeah, essentially, basically white gets a pawn back. And I don't know, I would say that the black has accomplished something as a knight. The rook on h8 look really stupid, but it's, let's see, your opponent played e4 in this position, and I'll stop the engine now. So e4 in this position, I mean, okay, for me, for me, it's obvious to take back. So I'm just trying to think what nuance I might miss.
I think you just want to give the pawn back to coordinate his pieces, I think. Or maybe play rook h4 with the tempo, like I don't remember. Yeah, he just wants to consolidate, because right now, I mean, like it's very easy to attack.
I see. Now he gets rook h4 in. Okay, so essentially this is almost an improvement of the previous idea. Or maybe, I don't know about the word improvement, but instead of rook h4, rook d1 and giving the pawn up like that here, he's basically sacking a pawn to activate his rook at least. So queen f3, and now okay, let's see. So what should black do? Wow, it feels like black is almost in the clear, but not quite.
Yeah, I think he got like sort of out of like in the clear. He traded some pieces, but then the point why I'm like we're presenting this game is because of the bishop pair in the open position. So ultimately, black will get rid of, like, prevent all of white's like tactical threats, and the game will become like normal again. But white will always have like a safe advantage, I would say. So I think I played rook d1, right, and then he played rook d4. Yeah, take. And it seems like black brought this rook from h8 into the game.
You can play bishop c4, but I guess I'm trying to think like bishop c4 wins the pawn on b7. But I can see the problem here. Okay, I think I understand. So it looks like you played bishop d2. Let's just say tempting would be bishop c4, but the idea said knight f6, you win this pawn. But then I think the problem might just be that black plays rook b8 and gets his pawn back.
Unless he has checkmated there, right? So that would be nice, but perhaps.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Again, it's 100% mark. Queen takes f7.
Yeah. So maybe rook a7. I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember why. Let's see what computer thinks. I don't remember actually myself. Yeah.
Okay, but let's see.
Maybe I just want to bring pieces into the game, so it's greedy.
For me, queen d7, rook a7. Okay, rook a7, and now queen back to f3. Yeah, no,
rook c7. Maybe I didn't like that. Black gets some, like, he gets all of his pieces into the game. Yeah, computer is not scared. It just says bishop d3, but I don't know. I thought, but yeah, I know. From human perspective, I just want to play for the initiative instead of like extra pawn. And since I already played a4, it's not easy for me to create a pass pawn because black controls b4 square. So I thought black might get some sort of block.
This is really worth honing in, because this is one of the things I've noticed is a difference between master level players and grandmaster level players. And I think one difference is that actually, you know what, this also even impacts low rated players, club players too. There's always a temptation to get material back quickly, saying, hey, if I can't get the pawn back today, who knows if I'll get a chance tomorrow. So you can sort of say, hey, let me rush, let me get this pawn back. And we just went over this exercise, so queen f3, rook c7. So, from a computer perspective, and white might still be a lot better here. But the problem is, why did we have to activate black rook? Why not, say, hey, keep your pawn, keep your rook in a cage. And it's psychologically much more difficult for somebody to play without a rook. Because, see, one of the things you have to remember in chess is you're trying to beat another human. And when you want to beat another human, you have to make their life harder. And one of the ways to make their life harder is make sure that, while you can win material, you win material in such a way that the pieces are also passive. And in practice, it's much more difficult to play for black with the rooks being stuck on a8 than, you having an extra pawn and the rook being activated all the way to c7.
Yeah, good point, right? But maybe here again, objectively, that was not a good decision, I think.
So you ended up playing, let's see what you ended up playing here. What did you play?
Bishop d2 here, right? Okay. Yeah.
D2, right, yeah. So I ended up playing bishop d2. And this is, again, since this whole series is about how to improve as a chess player, it's not necessary, Alex himself might be critical of his moves, but I think it's more that one needs to understand what's going in his head and what are the techniques that one can do to improve rather than, worrying about the, particular move. So the general idea here is you want black's life to be hard. You want the rook to be, back there. You want black to think on his feet or on her feet. And you want it so that black has to come up with moves and come up with moves that are painful. And so in this way, you don't pick up material quickly. You can wait and find the best moment. So what happened here? Your opponent played knight f6.
Yeah.
Okay, knight f6. All right, and I'll turn off the engine, otherwise it's becoming way too colorful. So let me think. What would be a good move in this position?
So I think a good question here is to ask yourself, like, what piece can I improve? And computer already suggests, like,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
computer probably suggests the right move. The right move is the one that's a 73%. But I think the most obvious thing is, yes, you want to improve. The only piece is the rook. And for me, I actually, to be honest, I consider rook e1 as well. And there's rook d1. But rook d1 has an additional idea which makes it more attractive. Oh God, I'm putting the wrong move as well. So rook d1 makes white asserting bishop c3. So bishop c3, bishop cannot take back, and then you take with check. And if not, then the whole bishop is played. So this is another, maybe to call this a secret would sound silly, but always try to develop with threats as much as possible, because whenever you develop with threats, you know that your opponent has to spend a move or two defending, and hence waste time. So what happened here? Queen b6 looks like the only move, or queen b6, right? Only move.
Yeah, and here, yeah, it's a very interesting moment. I mean, like, again, we have the bishop pair, and we want to open the position as much as possible. We want to make our bishops active as much as possible. So this is what the next move tries to accomplish, which is not what not the move the computer suggests.
Yes. Yeah. So I think for me, thinking about it is like, okay, b2 is attack. So one very obvious move to protect it. But the problem is, if you play bishop c1 protecting it, it's very passive. It doesn't make much sense. Like in this kind of position where your pieces are well placed, bishops on d2, you don't want to play a move like bishop c1. And similarly, this applies to a move like b3. You're giving back a free move. So what's a move that you can do that can defend the pawn, but at the same time, or not defend a pawn, counter against bishop b2, but at the same time, play an active move? And I've heard of this funny story. I don't know if this is something that you can relate to, but somebody told me that the best way to, there are three ways to defend. If somebody attacks, you can move your piece, you can defend. And the third way is to attack a more important piece.
Okay, and, never heard of that phrase, yeah.
Yeah, it's from Indian IM who actually said it. I think it's Raja Ravi Shekhar. And so I think in this case, he would be happy, because that probably seems like the right move, b4 here. So b4 actually hits this pawn, and and protected by the bishop. So in a way, you instead of just defending a piece, you're attacking a more important piece. He didn't refer to that in this sort of position. What he would say is, use some other piece like a bishop or something to attack a more important piece. That would be typically that's traditionally what he meant. But b4 makes some sense here, at least, because you're having a counter threat. And I guess the idea is, if a takes b4, bishop b4, the pieces are opening up. Like the two bishops are getting very active, dangerously active, even one might argue.
Yes, yeah, we're just expanding the battlefield for our bishops. So I think he has a take.
Bishop b4, king g8. Okay, so this actually is tricky. I'm not sure what to do here. But
now we're back to some quiet position. Like white has nothing concrete. The game continues, but it seems like
that is so funny, because I was struggling to find a good move here. I was thinking rook e1, rook e7, but that doesn't seem.
Black can play bishop c5. No, bishop c5.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
Can take and play queen b7. No, bishop queen b7. So
yeah,
okay. Maybe rook e1 we can play, but I don't remember why. Maybe rook e1. Yeah. I'm not sure what I played. I think I played g3, and I remember that I had to go for g4, which makes more sense.
Oh, g3. That seems. Yeah, that's quite impressive.
Well, I want to move my king from this diagonal. It's just a bit unpleasant to have those guys.
I see. So basically, you say queen, bishop, and all hitting f2.
Yeah, I want to improve the position of the king. On g2, it'll be super safe. There is no way to attack the king, and then I can maybe move my queen somewhere, so the pawn on f2 will not be hanging with check. Yeah, but perhaps g4 was more concrete, because not only I prefer king g2, but they also want to play something like king bishop c4 g5, which is again maybe not in this position. Maybe I played something else, but I remember I played g3 king g2 somewhere in the game.
No, it looks like your next move is g3 indeed. But
okay, I played g3, right?
I do have a question. So maybe this is a stupid question, but rook e1, rook e7 seems like a natural follow-up, and maybe it is too committal. I'm just trying to.
And I have a question. Do we have rook a4, queen b4 or not? That's a very silly question.
That's a good great point. I actually see this as a counterplay.
I have queen d1 in the end. Okay, but still.
Yeah, that's a great counter, and this is actually something to always be alert. Counter ideas. So now black is threatening queen takes b5. Seems like you have to capture rook, in which case queen takes b4.
Queen
and
d1?
Now suddenly attacking, e1 and a4. And so there's only probably one move, queen d1. In fact, I don't even see any other move here.
Yeah, queen d1. That
Might
may
be the only move.
have some compensation, but maybe not. Like again, we need to look deeper. But if Black doesn't find anything, then White can play like rook e2 and then eventually try to force the trade of queens. And then I think you should be able to win that position step by step.
Yeah, this is actually funny for me because I would think that, given everything, we'd look for an active move. So I'm actually really curious what the computer thinks of rook e1. Oh, I see.
Rook
He
C.
just
Okay, so yeah, maybe that's the reason why rook c2. Yeah, now it didn't come to my mind.
I see. So rook e7, and I guess you can just play rook c7 here.
No, that gives too much counterplay. I would be scared. Yeah.
So what is the move here? Oh, rook c1.
Yeah.
I'm confused on this. So rook c1.
I wouldn't play king h2. Right? I would be scared.
You cannot play king h2
because of bishop f2 anyways, right? Yeah.
Oh wow, but bishop.
Yeah, so but I wouldn't even calculate that far. I would just realize that I give too much counterplay to black. I just don't want to give so much counterplay. So
I see. Wow.
My goal is to play for 2 results here. I don't want to just go for some line where I might win or might lose. I mean, again, I don't want to give counterplay to my opponent out of nowhere because I can play it safe. So I just want to step by step like improve my position. G3, king, G2, and I mean, in a practical game, you have to play fast. I mean, you have to create psychological pressure on your opponent, and also it's quite unpleasant to defend this position, I think, with black in a real game because there is no real counterplay, and it's clear that white is better in the long term. Like white can do nothing and still be better, most likely.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Actually, from another perspective, I'm really impressed because the way I see it is this position feels like I don't know why, but the last couple of moves, if you look at it, like knight f6, you play rook d1, you're like basically you can imagine it's like this. You did this, and now you're a boxer in the ring. You're like, fine, I gotta knock my opponent out. So I started bishop d2 with the idea of rook d1, saying, hey, you know what, I'm gonna play bishop c3. I'm just gonna destroy you. And then queen b6, and now again b4. Say, look, I'm just gonna take you down. And now after all of this, say, you know what, the whole thing was just a joke.
Yeah, good point.
I'm just gonna play defensive move.
Right.
c3, full deal, sucker. And then you're like, what? What the hell is this? Is this a game of chess?
Yeah, it's a good point that you make. But in my head, this all comes automatically. Just like I see that I can get this position, but after all this sequence of confident moves, let's say rook d1, b4, bishop b4, and then I see I can get this position. Then I know that I must go for it unless there is something better. And since there was nothing better, I'm happy about this position because I know that I don't need to calculate anything further. I just know by heart that I'm just better, and that's it, right? I can just play for 2 results. But again,
this probably, to be very honest, when I used to program computer engines a long time ago, and I've even contributed some improvements to Stockfish itself, this is very hard for computers by definition. Actually, this particular position, I'm actually curious how many computers can actually see bishop b4 and then g3.
Okay, I think g4 is strong. I'm not sure. I think g4 is stronger as computers. No, actually, yeah, g4 is a bit stronger. But yeah, it's not much difference actually. Yeah. Because g4 is a very committal move. It weakens f4 and h4 squares, and that's why I didn't play that move. I thought, I don't want to play committal moves and give potential counterplay. But computer is not scared and just actually now I say g3 is a bit stronger. No, computer changed their opinion, but again, not much difference, perhaps.
No, I think from a human perspective, maybe g4 feels more. I know personally, I feel it's more risky to play g4 because you might give counterplay, whereas g3 you don't. Or
exactly, yeah. So I'm actually happy that g3 is the first line. But again, it makes sense. I mean, this pin, not the pin, but those 2 guys on b6 and d4 are quite unpleasant, and I want to move my king away from the diagonal. And on g2, it will be very safe.
Anyways, I think a comment, final parting comment before we move to the next position. I think this is what makes chess a hard game. Sometimes you have to go forward. Sometimes you have to sit back and play moves like g3 and pretend like the whole idea of going forward is to play g3 in this position. And so this is what makes chess hard. And I think the other intuition that Alex is seeing but not willing. I mean, he may not be expanding too much on it. Is that he just intuitively felt that, hey, with this queen and bishop, the only counterplay being f2. If I play king g2 and develop pieces, all these pieces start looking silly. And white has an important advantage. So it is okay to play a quiet move in this position because this quiet move g3, as harmless as it sounds, is actually restraining black from basically deactivating. I don't know. We had this Ukrainian guy. I knew he used to call this passivating. And I don't know if that's the appropriate expression to use. But in a way, passivating the queen and bishop because I moved the king to g2. Suddenly, queen and bishop are not doing much.
Yeah, no, it's still doing something, creating pressure, but it's not as unpleasant, right? Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yes, Anyway, so G3 is a key move in this position.
Rook d8 makes sense. Finally, Black brought the rook into the game. And again, it seems like it's just should be equal. I mean, like material is equal. Black pieces are playing. All of them are playing actually. And pawn structure in a way like symmetrical. But again, bishop pair is the bishop pair. So that's the main reason why I selected this game for today's session. Yeah. And whatever white does, white will be better. And even if I trade rooks, white is better. Like as long as I don't trade maybe one of the bishops. I mean, but even there, maybe white will be slightly better. Even if I trade one pair of bishops, perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, this is actually one of those things where, I guess it's concrete enough with the two bishops, you can feel like this, because one of the worries I would have in these positions is if black can get queen and knight against queen and bishop, sometimes it can be annoying. But I guess in this position, because the bishops are so centralized, it's not a problem. But otherwise, queen and knight is often stronger than queen and bishop.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, usually like rook and bishop is better than rook and knight, and queen and knight is better than queen and bishop. But maybe it's different in open position. Like let's say we trade a pair of rooks, we trade dark squared bishops, and we have light squared bishop and a queen versus queen and the knight. Okay, maybe that would be just totally drawish. But my point is maybe even there, it's maybe slightly more pleasant to play with white because position is open and bishop should be better than the knight. So.
That's a very interesting counterpoint, actually. This is something that I would never think about.
But I don't want to trade dark squared bishops, of course. That was just like extreme example. That would be just a dead draw, I guess. But so now I play G4.
Yeah, right. Yeah, generally.
Now I have to play because he has rook F5 threat, right? And
that is why there's a possibility that G4 might have been more accurate before.
Well, but yeah. On the other hand, he sort of pinned himself with rook on D5, so I don't know if it's a big deal to play G3 and then G4 at once. Maybe he wouldn't have played the same idea. Then.
Yeah, rook D5 might be a concession. That's a good point. So here, now black plays G5. That actually, this looks natural to me, I guess. But why is it natural? I'm just trying to think why this move looks
well, he wants to fix weakness on dark squares. By playing G4, we can squares on F4 and H4, and black wants to fix those. And it'll be ideal for him to bring the knight to G6. Like knight H7, knight F8, knight G6.
Yeah. Again, remember the knight dance thing. Like strong players always think about this. So already he's visualizing a knight dance: knight H7, knight F8, knight G6, and of course knight H4 is a threat. But more importantly, the knight can go to F4.
But that's just unrealistic thinking because position is open and black will never get time to do that. I mean, right? And as we see, I think I played rook E1 here. This is the move I want to play right now. And yeah, I played rook C1. Okay, and like I want to bring the rook somewhere to the open file and start creating threats. So black will never have 4 moves in a row to improve the knight.
Yeah, anyway, I mean, the first move is not a worry because if knight moves, the rook is hanging. So black is really far away from doing that. But yeah, rook C1 is a good move. And yeah, actually, it's sort of interesting. Rook E1 is not as strong because I guess knight is protecting guarding the E8. Another thing I've seen, which may be not applicable to this position, but in general, they say in these kind of positions, you want your rook to penetrate from the furthest away square, like C8, instead of E8, because E8, somebody wrote in some book that black can let's say use his king to defend or use pieces to defend. So the further away the rook penetrates, the better it is for white.
But here, first of all, by playing rook E1, I cannot penetrate to E8. But playing rook C1, I create the threat of rook C8. Yeah, so just more concrete.
Just concrete, yes. And now queen
D8, and now I played rook E1. So he prevented rook C8, but now I play rook E1, and I think I create a threat like bishop E7. Yeah, bishop E7 creates a threat of winning material because it will attack the queen. Queen will have to move somewhere. I'll play bishop F6, and then rook will be hanging on D5. So what we want to in this position, I mean, now before that, like 5 minutes ago, you mentioned that by playing rook D1, bishop D2, B4, I tried to be aggressive, but then I stopped and tried to play like solid chess. But now we're back into this territory where I want to start creating threats. Because again, I want to bring this quote by the first world champions, Wilhelm Steinitz, that when you have advantage, you have to attack, otherwise you lose an advantage. And so here, for some reason, I felt that I have to play aggressively. I mean, like try to create threats like rook C1, rook C8. He prevented that. Now I bring rook to E1 and I create the threat of bishop E7. So black doesn't have this luxury to try to offer some trade or improve the knight. I mean, he always have to keep protecting. And I think this is very important. And I think this fits my style just to feel this initiative, not losing initiative like with one move. Of course that happens, but again, this is the positions where I feel most comfortable with, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think this is a very good point. Like, going back and forth, like, aggressive, then defensive, or maybe solid chess, then again aggressive. And here there's a concrete threat. But I think this is why I think this game is great to replay. But it might also be a good training ground where viewers are welcome to try playing this against the computer and seeing how well you could do, and if you can emulate Alex's victory, or what are the challenges you might face. And as Alex pointed out quickly, bishop e7, bishop takes f6. So the problem is bishop e7, the queen has to move away from the defense of this rook. And the moment the bishop takes an f6, let's just put a dummy move, sorry.
Actually, no, if I look at the position, that's not really a threat. I mean, maybe rook e7 was a threat. Bishop e7 there is a problem with queen a5, bishop f6, and queen e1. Yeah, b6 actually prevent this point. So any move, but not the b6, right?
Yeah, so let's say you play g6, for instance. Although g6 also weakens on f6.
Yeah,
let's say king h7. So now
bishop the king on but let's say let's say queen a5.
That's a good point. Again, checking square. You know what? Put the king on
h8. Yeah, I think h7 would be risky. I wouldn't. If I'm black, I wouldn't want to put the king on the light square. Yeah, bishop e7, queen a5, and let's see if that works. But that's what I saw. Bishop f6, queen e1.
Yeah, bishop f6, queen e1.
And I cannot take the rook because I will get checkmated myself.
Yeah, queen f2. Yeah, basically queen d5. Yeah, let's just play it out. Queen f2 check. King only can go to h1 and then queen g1 mate, unfortunately. So this threat doesn't work. And so I think in this position, you can't, because bishop's attacking, you might have to find some other move. But rook d1, I don't know, rook d1.
Yeah, perhaps the rook e7 was the idea. I would play rook e7 instead of bishop e7. So it was like a double idea, like improve the rook and potentially have bishop e7 threat or rook e7. And here I think I'd play rook e7 without thinking. Right?
I think this is the key idea here. If black played b6, you still have bishop e7.
Yeah,
so,
I do have it.
Yeah, and if you played king like h7 or something will come around here. So one of the tricks I've seen is that you don't necessarily have to have fully concrete threats. And this is sort of like, I don't want to give away too many secrets in one video, but I think that, the success in chess is really like, you have to create small weaknesses for your opponent and make your opponent think that the position is worse than it actually is. So in this case, bishop e7 is a threat in some lines. Rook e7 is a threat in some lines. And you just don't know what is the right defense to all of them. So you're just making your opponent worry. I think that's sort of the secret of chess. You don't necessarily need a concrete win in all lines. You just need to create and small threats.
Right. Yeah. He played queen b8. Interesting.
Yeah, queen b8 actually looks good because bishop e7 doesn't gain a tempo anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, queen b8 is not an active move by any means. So so the question is, how do we continue? I'm not going to look at your next move. Let me guess. Oh God, this is hard.
The most natural move, yeah. The
natural move to me will be rook e7.
Yeah, rook e7. We just improve the position of the rook. I mean, if we can enter like that, we enter.
Yeah, and for me, I think the calculating tactical point I saw was like if bishop c5, for instance, you can just take
and win the pawn.
Win the pawn on b7, and this is where I think actually I don't know what's the best way to take it. Maybe queen b7, and I think this is one of those positions where people say technique and you win, but I think technique is still.
It's a bit tricky here. I mean, because if let's say black takes queen b7, and then knight d5, and then knight f4, rook, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is
it's a bit tricky because we played this committal move g4. If the pawn was on g straight, that'll be a bit easier. But with pawn on g4, it's not simple to me. Like maybe I wouldn't even win this position.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, so it's actually tricky. So this is one of those things. Maybe in this position, rook b7 has to be played.
Perhaps, yeah. Again, here my thinking would be not how to attack, but how to prevent opponent's counterplay, because he wants to play 95, 94. Then I would be scared how not to blunder something and not to lose, because knight in conjunction with the queen is a very strong tandem, as you said, right? And I never thought of that way the way you mentioned. It just, yeah, it's like you can see it in every move. So for chess players, this is just second nature to use this word. Yeah. Okay, so rook e7, and he played queen c8. And yeah, again, he just tries to prevent my threat, because my threat was bishop c4. I want to bring this bishop to a2 g8 diagonal back to where it was before, because f7 is a target. No? And by playing queen c8, he prevents this idea.
Yeah, now I have to think what is the best move.
Yeah, so let's think. How can we renew the threat?
Sorry, renew the threat of?
Bishop c4, because he prevented this move.
Okay. I see. Okay. Yeah, if you say it like that, then the move is obvious to find. But
I know, there are a couple of moves. Yeah.
Oh, really? There's a couple of moves. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there are a couple of ways to prepare bishop c4, right? So,
yeah, exactly. No, actually, that's a very good point. Probably a weak move is queen d3, because I guess he has bishop f2.
Bishop c5, yeah. Queen d3 doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, bishop c5 just loses. So I think queen b3 might be the move.
Yeah, queen b3.
But there could also be queen e2. I now start realizing that too. But queen b3 feels slightly stronger because it attacks keeps attack on d5.
Yeah, so I think I play queen b3 here. Yeah, I can see the notation. Yeah,
yeah, queen b3. Okay. And I think the only advantage over queen e2, by the way, which is similar, is that I think queen e2 doesn't hit the rook on d5. So queen b3, queen c1. Okay, wow. So this is actually he's trying to get some active counterplay going on.
And yeah, now we need to calculate. I think bishop c4 still looks good. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, bishop c4 hitting. I mean, the other. Yeah, okay. Now I was looking also at rook e8, but it probably isn't necessary to play rook e8. So bishop c4. Hopefully this move I was about to say. Oh my God, the next move I totally cannot expect. Queen f4. Okay, so hitting f2. And I think this is one of those stupid things, right? It's obvious that if, and this is maybe when we're looking over a game on YouTube, we don't quickly think, but this is a classical game. So clearly if somebody plays a move like queen c1, you should really, really consider queen f4 and hitting f2. And in fact, bishop c4 should not be played lightly. You need to make sure that you have a response to queen f4.
Yes, yeah, of course. You have to be a bit scared, because once you play g4, your king is a bit exposed, right? So you have to consider counterplay for your opponent.
So the most obvious, or not obvious, let's say one move that comes to my head now is just queen f3.
Yeah, the safest move, right? Yeah, I think perhaps the strongest. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps the strongest. I mean, even in fact, alternatives are not clear. I guess rook e2 is an alternative.
Yeah, but I would like to keep my rook active there. Queen f3 is the move that you mentioned that makes more sense. Okay, because so I keep all my other rooks, pieces active.
And actually, one beautiful thing about queen f3, which is, I'm sure, what tempted you to play queen f3, is that now you're guaranteed a trade of queens, and then it's sort of like a technical position with two bishops and with your active rook on e7. So at least you can look forward to building on a small advantage without any dangerous counterplay.
I think I missed something after that. I almost gave him a chance to make a draw. He took, right? He played rook d7.
Okay, so
yeah, maybe so. I think
for me, I would just take the pawn. Yeah, bishop f7. Take the pawn.
No, that makes sense. Maybe king e2 was too slow. Yeah, I don't remember. I remember that one move was not good.
King e2 was
yeah, I think I should have traded while I had this opportunity, because he don't remember honestly. Oh, it's analyzed. Yeah, f3 was wrong. Okay? Yeah, so f3.
Okay, so king e2, b6.
f3.
Here f3.
He can play rook d8 and keep rooks on the board. Yeah. So I should have traded right away and then do the same thing, I think.
But the question is it that bad for rooks to be on the board? Can you just?
Yeah, I thought not bad. I remember the computer just thought it was a mistake.
Okay.
Maybe let's see what the current computer thinks again.
I'm also curious. So
instead of f3, before f3. Before f3.
Before f3, okay. I mean, for me, it feels like everything is winning.
It's the same thing. It just says everything is winning, so it's fine. Yeah, perhaps not a big deal.
Yeah, no, because f3, if you're real worried, I mean, especially if you're worried about computer precision and worried about this, I don't know. Intuitively, I'm not worried at all, because I feel like.
Yeah, I was not worried during the game. That's why I played it then. But I remember
okay.
Perhaps the engine was not strong enough, and yeah. So this one, according to this computer, everything looks very, very convincing, anyways. No?
Yeah, at least, yeah.
And as you see again, the bishop pair, bishops control the entire position. I mean, the bishop from b4 can go to d2 and attack that pawn. And I don't know, to me it comes intuitive. Maybe I can explain that well. It's just when I see the position like this, I just see the power of those two bishops.
Yeah, I mean, I can do some basic thing, which is normally in these positions, believe it or not, white doesn't mind keeping the rook, because rook and bishop is much stronger than, say, rook and knight, for instance. So, yeah, is that what you're trying to say, basically, that rook and bishop go very well together?
No, just two bishops, yeah. Even without the rook. I think we traded after that, yeah.
Oh, okay. I see. Two bishops. Okay. So rook d7, knight d7, now bishop d2, and actually, it looks like he's already lost a pawn. What does he do?
Don't remember, but still, we have to be a bit careful, because his pawn on g5 fixes both our pawns on f3 and h3. So we have to make sure we don't get in some theoretically drawish endgame. Let's say we trade which bishop, no, just a second. There'll be our dark squared bishop for the knight, and then it'll be a very easy draw, light squared bishop versus dark squared bishop. Although black will be pawn down, it's an easy fortress. So we still have to be a little bit careful not to trade the wrong pieces or not to allow him to take our a4 pawn. But yeah,
actually, this is a good point, right? Right here, probably Alex is guessing that or at least I'm guessing Alex played bishop e8. So, but bishop takes g5.
Which is the first line of the computer, but not the human move. Human move is bishop e8, as you said, right? As long as I calculate the consequences, because again, I want to prevent him from creating some sort of blockade with knight e6 and knight e4.
Interesting. Yeah, this is one of those positions where it feels like bishop g5 can win, but maybe the point is it's not about winning or not; it's about allowing counterplay. And probably you feel that the win is easier after bishop e8.
I think I just calculated here. Yeah, knight e6. Yeah. So he wants to play knight e4 check, and again, of course, he'll be super happy if I take bishop e4 because that will be a draw. But I think I
actually,
calculated.
it's worthwhile pointing out that if knight f4, bishop takes f4, g takes f4, it's opposite color bishop position. White's a pawn up, but it's still a draw. So that's one of the dangers in these positions. You don't want to allow opposite color bishop positions.
Bishop. I think I just calculated, move by move, and that's why I played it. Again, seems like why would I trade my dark square bishop, which seems like a good bishop, right? Because all of my pawns are on light squares. And I traded for the bishop that it seems like a bad bishop because all of black pawns are on dark square as a bishop itself, right? But the thing is that now it gets into some very concrete waters. I just want to play king e3, king e4, king e5, and just go and take that pawn on b6, and that's it. So here it's up to calculation. So there is less.
I think what I'm worried about is like knight f4,
right, knight f4. I think that's what he played, right? Again, that was part of calculation.
This is scary. Yeah, this is scary. Okay. So
because if that works, black has to take on e3, right? Otherwise, I play bishop e6, I just win.
Yeah, basically this is a blunder because it's just opposite color bishop. So king d2 looks like the only move. In fact, any other move just loses the piece. So you have to play king d2. Okay, so the line is what? To take on e3 and take on h3. And then you have to calculate king
he has to take here, right? But again, he to make a draw, he must remove my pawn a4. He cannot do that. He cannot trade it. And my plan, therefore, is very easy to centralize my king and just to win.
So basically, if he plays knight h3, then he
doesn't have time for that, I believe. Yeah, just king e4, king e5, king d6, king c7. Yeah. And again, bishop is stronger than the knight. Look how bishop cuts off the black king. Black cannot go to g6, the shortest route. It must go to g8, f8, as he did, no?
So bishop g8, now king e4.
Now white has a threat of h4, undermining the knight.
Yeah, this is actually important because I was considering h4 here, but unfortunately,
h2 check. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yes, and but however, here now the idea is that you're going to play. Oh God, what did he play? His next move is king f8. Oh no, okay.
Yeah. So that's my bishop, but the problem is that he doesn't have time to bring the king, like let's say, to d6, and then maybe there will be good chances to make a draw because there'll be sort of a fortress. But the problem is that I have a double attack, right? Like let's say king f8, what he played, right? Bishop b5.
Yeah, and just one second. I just wanted to point out if black plays a null move. Actually, let's just say he plays king h8 just because I'm feeling lazy. So the point is h4, and if g takes h4, then the knight's hanging. And so white is threatening h takes g5. And interestingly, if he plays knight e8 or something, you'll probably play h5, right? Or
I think anything is going, but yeah, I think maybe h5.
Yeah, any move wins here. Okay.
I think that.
So king f8 is what he played. Now you played bishop.
Just bishop b5, and again, the idea is that I have h4 threat, and then king f5, I think. And if it takes, then I go to d5, c6, and I win the pawn. So it's just lost. So I think I calculated earlier before going into this position.
It takes what? So the idea is h4, even if it takes the pawn or takes something?
No, if he takes the king, knight takes h3, I have king d5, king c6.
Oh, takes right away. I see. So if he plays bishop knight h3, then your idea was just king d5, king c6, and take, right? Or maybe king d5, king c6 takes and move your a pawn.
Yeah, that should be winning, I presume, right? Because he can never trade my other pawns because I can protect them with a bishop, and then I have an outside pass pawn, and the knight is not good in the open position, anyways.
So king f7, king f7. I guess you can still play h4.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, h4 I played. Yeah.
H4, okay. And now, okay, king f6. But you can just take and get your king to e5, right?
And he resigned. Yeah, I can see the notation. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where he resigned.
Okay, I see.
And again, we see a bishop versus knight in open position. Just like the bishop I can go place my bishop on c6, and I'll protect all of my pawns, right? And the knight can do the same.
This is actually the long range piece. Yeah. So let's. Yeah. But how do we make up a move? Let's say he plays g6 for.
It's my favorite bishop. I don't know. Like I like the light square bishop, and in this line. The next game will be also about light squared bishop.
What I like about this position geometrically is that there's only one white weakness. It's worth defending against, and that's f3. But the bishop can just play c6, go on c6, defend against f3, defend against a2 if necessary. And then white basically is very easy to win. Just get the king all the way here, take here, and there's no counterplay. Black can't gang up on this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah, just no moves. Yep.
This is a great game, actually. I think what I liked about this game is the theme of going from slow to fast, slow to fast, slow to fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so like.
But it doesn't seem like a very colorful game. Next one is maybe a bit more dynamic. Actually, next one was played 1 year before this game, but it's in the same line.
Yeah, quickly, I just want to make some recap of notes of people who want to improve on chess and what are the things that they can learn from this game to help their path of chess improvement. First thing that I'm going to point out without too much ado is understanding the bishop pair. Like, it seems innocuous. Look, 2 bishops and a knight against a bishop and 2 knights. But for a grandmaster, I think somebody told me this is like often their bread and butter. This is how they make a living. So like, you really should learn about the bishop pair and how to, use that to your advantage. And then the other thing to remember is it looks like, with 2 bishops, you just open the position, play e4, d5 and win. But that kind of, thing works in like fairyland. It doesn't really work. There's a lot of subtle maneuvering and strategy here. You try to go, so it's still important to play backward moves or defensive moves in this position. Basically, if you look at it from I think I made this point from a bookkeeper perspective, black is still up a pawn. So there's a lot of twists and turns. And then the funny thing comes when we traded the rooks. This position also comes to my mind. You look very aggressive. Looks like you want to give a knockout punch, but no, knockout punch is just to play g3, move your king up. And again, it's like a game where white again goes to endgame. White trades queens, and once you trade queens, you're a little better, but that's more than enough to win in this position.
Here, black also loses a pawn tactically, but even if I couldn't win the pawn, white will still be better because of the bishop pair, right?
Yeah, bishop pair, and basically, what's fascinating is like if you want to improve, looking at how to use the 2 bishops to your advantage, and there's probably a lot of other reference games that come to mind. I don't know who the best players are for 2 bishops. I think Bobby Fischer is like a good player to learn the 2 bishops. I don't know if you have any other recommendations on the 2 bishops.
I know about the bishop versus knight. His famous game against Mark Taimanov from their match in 1971, I think, right? Which Fischer won was 6-0 score, and that was I think from the Sicilian, and it was also about light squared bishop versus knight. And I think we discussed this game earlier.
Yes, you mentioned it as a way of doing trades, like trading a bishop for a knight.
Yeah, so that's another game. Yeah.
Now, I think for 2 bishops, I think Bobby Fischer was. Oh God, I think he's one of the best. Not best. He's a very good practitioner to learn from.
I know that Gary Kasparov part of like the bishops over knights. I mean, but I know against some grandmasters like knights over bishops, right? So it's a matter of preference, I presume.
Like Anand is one, the Indian grandmaster and former world champion. He basically loved the knights.
I see.
In many of
I like bishops.
I think
bishop is more open piece,
And then the other secret to learn actually is you don't necessarily have to learn how to win with the 2 bishops. You can also just learn how to neutralize the 2 bishops. But studying this imbalance of 2 bishops against bishop and knight is very important because you'll see this theme in again and again. And you really need to learn how to play in those kind of positions. It doesn't matter from which perspective.
Right, but again, that comes with experience, right? Because it's not an easy concept to understand when the bishop is better, when the knight is better, because not always the bishop is better than the knight, perhaps even in open position. Like maybe in most of the cases, but not in all of the cases. There are always exceptions, and this is where perhaps years of experience helps. Yeah,
one question I had is would this be good for somebody who's 12, 13, 1400 and trying to learn, or do you think this is better for people at 16, 17, 1800?
Yeah, I think it's good to learn for everyone. For any level, perhaps for title players, for beginners, my understanding is very, very basic. Bishops better in open positions in most of the cases, knights are better in closed positions, and then it's just up to experience. So I again sorry if my explanations are that basic. This is how I perceive. I just look at the position and I'll say my opinion. But overall, I don't know how to explain this because it depends on the concrete position.
This actually is difficult to explain because once you've learned the skills, for you feel like, oh, what's there to learn? You can, it's obvious. But I think this
the summary is one sentence. Try to have bishops in open positions and the knights in closed positions. But if we go beyond one sentence, it's just a matter of years of experience, right? So yeah, I cannot make a smarter comment than that. I mean, actually.
No, I think that's a good point. I think that's what I wanted to actually hone into.
Yeah.
It's years of experience, but how can we short circuit the years of experience? And one of the ways I'm thinking you can short circuit is by just going over like famous games where one side has the two bishops, including this one. I would say this one is pretty decent, where where the
That's
game
not
was
sure. I'm not sure if that's short circuiting. This is actually the right way to spend those years and get that experience by studying classical games.
Maybe the reason why I would call it short circuiting, that's a very good point. Maybe the reason I would call it short circuiting is a lot of times, people spend a lot of, let's say, time playing bullet, time playing, doing things that are not very productive. Whereas if people were to study the two bishops and try to study games like this one and understand the technique that it takes to win these positions, that hopefully is a better way to spend time to improve your chess, as opposed to
surely it is, but not many people listen to those advices because it's much more exciting for them to play like bullet or blitz. And I understand it's more exciting, but in order to improve in chess beyond a certain point, it just it requires a lot of hard work, labor, just going over those classical games and trying to understand. And this is where most people they don't want to go further because it requires a lot of effort and it's not clear what the benefits are. So
Yes, no, I think that's the whole idea of this YouTube series. We're trying to make it so that getting better at technical chess, getting better at real chess is not that difficult, and in fact, it might even be fun. While it feels fun to play bullet, it feels fun to play blitz. If you want to really get better at chess, you have to go over many deep positions. And I think at least hopefully this game, showed a lot of interesting nuances, even for a technical chess game.
Right. Let's see the next game. It's also the bishop pair, same line. While with this game is still fresh.
That's a good point. Let's do that. Sorry. I just need to open the PGN.
That's a very nice software. Can you talk more about this software?
Sure. This is actually there's something called Nibbler. Hold on. Can you tell me which game it is? Is it the game?
It's second one. Yeah. So
Okay. Yeah. So this is actually Nibbler, and the reason I like the software, it works well with the LC0 engine, the Alpha Zero, or not Alpha Zero, Leela Alpha Zero chess engine. And I have an RTX GPU on this machine, which is like an RTX 2060. So it allows you to understand neural networks directly, from your home, and you can. I like the way that it sort of draws those percentage marks. And what's really nice is it also does it, for deeper down the tree. So it allows you very quickly to see what the computer thinks is important and not important, even in subsequent positions.
And from what I understood, you created this software, right? Or you
helped not this particular one. No, not Nibbler.
Okay.
But I like it. I mean, I created other software like Pico Chess.
Okay, right. Nibbler, I never heard of it. That's very interesting. Never heard even.
Yeah, see, I think what's funny is Nibbler has one particular perspective, which is if you want to use LC0 efficiently. So in a way, it's not the most portable interface, but it's nice if you want to use LC0 and do analysis, and you can see its color and sort of get an understanding of how the neural networks are thinking. Okay, so this looks like the same opening. Also, is this Mamadov, is he an IM or a GM?
Yeah, he was an international master. I think his rating was 2444 in this game, but I might be wrong. But I think 2440 to 2450.
A4, bishop f5, e3, e6, bishop c4, bishop
and this game was played 8 years ago. Yeah, it's crazy to think, but it was so long ago.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's again the exact same line, knight h4.
Yeah, I like to play. And again, I don't know theory. I just play with an instinct. I mean, and I almost beat I think Maxim Matlakov. I mean, he's a very strong Russian player. About at some point he reached 2700 and beyond that. And I just played and tried to play with the bishop pair, and somehow I got a winning position, but then I failed to convert because it's tough to beat those guys. So yeah, even now I'm ready to play if someone plays Slav against me, but I don't recall when was my last game in this line. Maybe
it's good. It's sort of like you're feeling at home in these kind of.
Yeah, I just feel at home. Yeah, but against the game that I played against Melik Hachian, there I struggled because he played a very concrete line. If you remember, bishop g4, bishop h5, and g5, and he knew something. He had preparation, and I didn't. So this is perhaps the only way of response that can take me out of my comfort zone when someone tries to sort of refute this line against me. But if someone plays general moves, let's say bishop g6 that we discussed earlier, then I'm comfortable because I just get the bishop pair and there is no threat to me, so I know I can just develop. But if someone plays aggressively, then maybe I'm not so comfortable. So.
And one question, this kind of where you feel at home in this bishop pair position, is that a result of studying many such games, or is it just a natural preference? Even before studying such games, you just felt like the bishop pair is something that you like to play with.
I don't know. It requires a lot of self-reflection to understand where is the root. I mean, of this preference. And again, perhaps because I played this line as a child with both colors, perhaps because of studying as well. So perhaps there is no single answer. Maybe there are a few reasons. It's just a preference. So I don't know. Again, no idea.
Yeah, no, it's good to think about it, because I also, like, when showing my game, sometimes I really prefer dynamic positions, and I never understood why. And sometimes, yeah, maybe something as simple as you played these things, you understood these positions well, and you just felt like, okay, you got some confidence, and that made you comfortable.
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps. So maybe, actually, I think this was the first game in this line, 2012, and after that I had a few good games, and it went very well. Well, let's see. So he played bishop h5, so he wants to provoke move g4, because again, g4 is a very committal move. Like, it weakens my king, and then white has to play. White has to keep on playing precisely, because after you say A, you have to say B. You cannot just like play.
G4 actually makes me scared a little bit, because I know I can't. Yeah, actually, this is, of course, knight takes g4 doesn't work, because even though it looks tempting and the queen attacks the knight, you can just take, and queen takes knight. You just take one more time, and white is winning. But however, it does make me think that there's some other possibilities of knight, like, okay, knight fd7. I don't think it's dangerous, but it could be knight d5. It just feels scary. Like knight d5, I get what the idea would be to play knight g2.
G2, yeah. And now white has ideas like h4, some potential in the future, right? So it's, knight e2.
Oh, this is even analyzed. Okay, never mind. It's analyzed.
Yeah, it's analyzed here. Again, I don't remember, because there are only moves analyzed, but no, there is no reference what game that was.
Okay, so the software has a limitation that it's not showing the text comments.
Right.
So knight e2, and in a way it's good, because it makes us think. So knight e2. Okay, so yeah. So anyway, g4 feels committal, because it's scary that the knight can move. But in this case, I guess if the knight moves, this knight moves too, and you're totally fine. Okay, so let's see. So g4, he played bishop g6.
Yeah. And I believe e4 here. No, I believe.
No, I thought you
had first. Yeah. Makes sense, because I don't want to blunder like knight e4, knight g4 in the future. Okay, so I took an e4 then, I think.
E4. Okay, I see. Yeah, then maybe the point is that this knight doesn't have much employment anymore. Well, I guess it could go to g2 and play h4, but...
Oh, then knight e4. Yeah, there are ideas like that, but yeah. We have to play precisely here, because again, once we played g4, we took some we made some commitment, and therefore we have to be more careful about black playing e5 or c5 and trying to open up the center. So, okay,
h takes g6. Yeah, in this case, of course, f takes g6 doesn't work.
Right.
E6 pawn is hanging, and generally, people say capture toward the center, which I guess
yes,
it's a good principle. So now, what to play here?
And now it gets into some like muddy waters, because e4, like the move that I played. I mean, again, we fight for the center, but we weaken the d4 square pawn. I mean, and this is we have to be very careful about in this pawn structure. No? Like for now, it seems fine, because like not great counterplay, but it arguably becomes much easier. Like queen b6, rook d8, e5, c5. There are so many possible ideas, and now it's a sort of a dynamic position. If white just plays general moves, I mean, he might again just get into trouble very quickly.
It's interesting what to play here.
I think I played g5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it feels like you have to play something g5 or like knight 8.
Because I want to displace the knight, and here the interesting point is if black plays knight h5, knight is out of play forever right there, because it cannot come back into the game. As long as we don't allow knight f4 in some moment.
Actually, it's interesting, because I was thinking knight h5, there might be some follow-up with like f4 or something, but you don't need to do a follow-up.
Perhaps f4 is a good move, actually, yeah. I think f4 is a good move, yeah. And then bishop e3, and then maybe even f5, and try to open the f file and the diagonal.
But maybe your deeper point is you don't need to play f4, right? You can wait, because knight can't do much.
Yeah, but he wants to play e5. That's my biggest concern right now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So f4 prevents that.
F4 prevents e5, yeah. So that's another trick, like feels like f4 is an aggressive move, so you can play f5 or something, but the idea is just to prevent backwards.
Here I would not think aggressively. I would think prophylactically. I want to prevent e5, c5, or make it difficult, and then I know I'm better, so then I can focus on my task. So here again, I have prophylactical thinking. So f4 is like more prophylactical than attacking.
What?
We played rook
Wait, g4. Whoa, that is scary. What the? Okay.
Yeah, it was scary during the game, right?
Oof.
It's just a useful move. He wants to play knight e8, but first he gets the rook out of f8.
Yeah, this looks very scary, because the most natural one is to capture here. But then I guess he plays rook d4, and he's hitting the queen as well as the rook on.
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that, right? Yeah.
And bishop e3, it looks like he can just take, and bishop e6.
I think we're just in
let's
trouble.
take this with check,
86.
and here then now 8 takes b6, and
And all of our dark squares are weak, like b4, d4, f4. It's just
actually the funny
positional
thing
trouble.
is black is not a piece up. Black is not a piece up because I overlooked that the e3 bishop is gone too.
Right.
So the material may not be that much worse, but the problem is there's no way white has an advantage because black is way too solid.
Right. But
yeah,
still,
like
it's just it's a positional disaster. This position.
Yeah, positional. Actually, this is one of those things that it's worthwhile thinking about it. I felt like it's not good for white, but it's, as Alex pointed out, it's actually a positional disaster because yeah, maybe describe why it's a positional disaster.
Again, dark squares. I mean, too many holes like b4, d4, f4. I mean, like our bishop is bad. Black's bishop is good. I don't know. Perhaps not this move. Maybe rook d1 we had to play. I don't know, but
yeah, that's a good point. So basically, just the dark squares are weak.
Yeah, it's just like it shows the potential danger of playing moves like g4, e4, and then getting hit in the center, and then just
And that's a very interesting point that you play g4, you play e4, you play all those aggressive moves, and suddenly if the idea is that all of your pawns get vacuumed off, like the g5 pawn get vacuumed off, and the d4 pawn is gone, and suddenly it shows that your previous strategy was totally in vain.
Yeah, I like to make this comparison with between pawn moves and bad words. Like, let's say you said bad word to a person, you can never take it back. Same thing in chess. Like you play a pawn move, you cannot take that back. I mean, so that's the analogy that I have in mind about pawn moves.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, it's like, no, I heard the thing that pawns can't move backwards, but I never heard that every time you you move a pawn, it's like a curse word. In the sense
yeah,
that
like the analogy I have, like potential. Yeah, that's like an extreme case. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think the problem is with that analogy. The only problem with the analogy is I don't think it ever helps to use a curse word. But I guess maybe the point is that if you maybe by moving a pawn forward and having to take it back, then it becomes like a true curse word. It's not useful that everyone will remember.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so after g5, rook d8, bishop e3 looks like the only move then.
Yeah, bishop c98. Now after that, I want you to think after 98. After he played this, I think he played that move, right? So
yes, he played 98. So
actually, sorry, queen e2 I played, and then maybe let's play queen e2, just developing the piece, and knight d7, and then please don't look at the notation because this move can be
sure. Yes.
So what will be your plan? So this move is a novelty, but this position anyways hasn't been seen much in practice.
Wow.
But this position is already sort of novelty anyways. I mean, but I think the plan is very interesting. I mean, so I still vividly see this plan even now. If I never saw this position, it just comes natural. So what do we want? We have the bishop pair. Which bishop is black missing? Light squared bishop, right? So which squares do we want to target? Well, light squares, right? Because he cannot control them well. So how can we do
that? One idea that comes to my head, of course, it's a bad idea, but at least let me explain thinking. If white plays d5, then white can hit the queen with tempo and also hit the e6 pawn twice because there's d6, fe6 bishop is defending. Only problem is black has this move bishop c5. It might even be only move in this position. And
only but sufficient move, yeah.
Sufficient, yeah, only but sufficient because let's say moves like this. Actually, there's two good moves for black here, unfortunately, but
it's just whatever black does, it just doesn't look good for white because we just weaken.
Yeah, and then the problem is that there's going to be a discovered attack against the king at g1. So the interesting thing is you want to play d5, but you can't play it.
So how else can we try to weaken light squares? Because again, how do we come to that intuition? We have the bishop pair. My opponent doesn't. He's missing light squared bishop. So we want to attack light squares because those are more vulnerable. But for now, it doesn't seem that they're vulnerable at all. I mean, black has a very solid pawn structure. So how can we blow it up?
Yeah, so the funny thing was the next move with my head, which is also not good, was queen f2 with the idea of d5. But then I started realizing even if black plays some null move, let's say a5,
still bishop c5, yeah, black still has bishop c5.
Still bishop c5, yeah.
And that's what I don't want. Yeah, I don't want to touch this pawn whatsoever because it weakens dark squares, and I don't want to weaken dark squares. I want to keep my pawn there, yeah, if possible. So what else can we do?
I really hope it's not a king move.
That's funny.
Sort of weird. Yeah, because the thing is if it's a king move, king g2 is the only one because king h1 feels stupid. Well, it feels passive. And the problem is rook ae1. Again, again d5, again bishop c5. So if d6, again it feels like actually this is worthwhile going. Let's say rook ae1, and now let's say black plays null move. Probably black has better than null move, so let's pretend there's null move. And now if d5.
Yeah, maybe now, you managed to play it under favorable circumstances. So now I think it works, right? But yeah, maybe black should have done something differently, I guess.
Yeah, so now
Yeah, maybe rook e1, but again, doesn't seem natural because I don't want to go for d5 because black will prevent that, I think. Huh?
No, also the problem is this rook doesn't look well placed on it. This is one of those things where you have to think of a lot of additional considerations. Normally, this rook is okay on a1 because you sometimes want to play for a5. Rook a1 is also a very committal move by white because he's saying everything's on the king side, and if rook services may be needed on the queen side. So that's the problem with this move. And actually, even more obvious problem with this move, rook f1, because here initially you were saying I want to play f4, f5 is potentially
that's one of the ideas.
And this rook is very useful. And now suddenly you're saying no, I want to. Oh wait, oh god, I think I saw the next move without even.
Yeah, that was king g2. Yeah.
Okay. So like so it looks like now by possibility of elimination it looks like king g2 is a very reasonable move because you want to play for d5 and king g2 is only sort of ways to play. But it's sort of I hope that we covered all the possibilities and showed why rook e1 is not as good, rook f1 is not good, and
I don't know. Rook d1 also looked reasonable, but maybe a bit too slow. Let's say just to bring the rook to the center and cover the d4 square because this is where black is going to create his counterplay. But the idea of king g2 is not actually to play d5. Maybe it creates a threat of d5 in this particular position, but the bigger plan is to play h4, h5, and if black takes, to play g6. I mean, something like that. I want to open up the a to j diagonal because it's where my bishop is powerful. So actually, this moves the king from the g1, a7 diagonal where black always has his bishop c5 annoying move, and also liberates the h1 square for the rook. So I can play rook h1, h4, h5 and create counterplay. Not counterplay, but attack.
Yeah, totally miss this idea. So the idea is to play h4.
It's a multiple purpose move, perhaps. Yeah. H4. Perhaps d5 works. Perhaps after a5, perhaps d5 works. No, after a5.
No,
so perhaps
I'm just showing how to say it. Like just null move, if null move. Yeah. So this is the white's idea. So white's
perhaps
idea is like
something like that. Here, maybe it's still tricky because black takes bishop e6, king h7, and the king seems safe, and our king is not. But something like that, yeah. So here, perhaps this is black will say black is better, perhaps. I don't know, or maybe not worse. I don't know. But
no,
that's
I think
one
of the secrets I'm learning now is that you just need to have a lot of ideas in your arsenal. The ideas may not be useful right away, but you just have typical plans and you keep. So one of the things I'm realizing is you don't just follow one plan obstinately. You have to keep having many different plans and keep switching across plans, switching amongst plans.
I mean, it's like having the same pair of jeans for every weather. I mean, it's not possible, right? In summer it will be hot, in winter it will be cold, right? So you have to have the different clothes for different types of weather. So yes, that's a thing where grandmasters have advantage because they've been exposed longer to the game and they perhaps have more tools in their arsenal, hopefully. So
the funny thing is, I guess even the jeans, you might just be wearing a slightly off-colored jean just to throw your opponent off. So you keep those possibilities as well. Anyway,
perhaps
it's quite fascinating. So what happened after king g? Okay, so now d5 is a threat to some extent.
So what did he play? Remember?
Black has to.
I remember he got scared. On 96, he just. I think he. 25. Sorry. Okay, so he was scared of d5, which makes sense. Now the question is, does he want to take on c3? Is this a move to consider? During the practical, during the real game, we have usually 1 hour and 30 minutes with some increment. How much time do we have to spend on understanding whether this pawn is really hanging, bishop c3, b3, queen c3, and whether it's worth protecting it? Let's say rook fc1 or bishop d2.
That's a great practical question. I think this is actually one of my sort of weaknesses in chess. I think I spend too much time on these things because I know that, let's just put it this way, that if somebody's master level IM, there's a good chance that they're threatening it. But I would notice that when I was analyzing against the top GM, one of the things he would do is in these positions, he may not even analyze it too deeply. Say, hey, even if he plays it, I'll find the right move. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I think I just discarded. I did not discard. I just didn't pay. I didn't care about that move because it just seems that white again has compensation, similar to the previous game where black took bishop c3, bc3, knight e4. Again, I have the bishop pair, and here I have a clear plan of opening up the position, and I have the center as well. So I think hopefully I played h4. Yeah, I played h4. I see. Right. So this is what I would do right now nowadays as well, because again, it's just too silly to play move like rook fc1 or bishop d2, because we already made some commitment. We have to stick to our plan and play aggressively, dynamically.
Yeah, no, I guess in this position, maybe the answer is it's more important to be consistent than to be 100% accurate. I mean, it's better to just be consistent and play for this plan, even if black is probably slightly has some more possibilities in this position compared to other plans. It's just not worth worrying about it because the compensation is too much, and this is again where intuition can help. I think the biggest funny problem is you can't trap this queen, so it's just like positional compensation.
I would not look for trapping the queen. I think I would just, I don't know, maybe just play even something like rook h1, knight d6, bishop a2. Again, the computer might say black is better, but I don't think. Say bishop a2.
Actually,
just
this is a good thing to test.
No,
computer is still 66%.
Much better.
Yeah, one of the things but it likes bishop d3 more. I think one of the things is, unfortunately, I don't know if this is good or bad, but computers, nowadays they learn a lot of the top human games, and that's aiding the calculation. So I've actually seen it to be less common that computers don't like, typical human moves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think the computer doesn't even like black's plan. So h4.
It suggests to take, but it says black white is still better, right? The first line, knight d6, bishop e2, bishop c3.
Yeah, actually, let's look at that line again. So bishop.
Knight d6 first. I think what he played.
Knight d6.
Yeah, just improve the knight, bishop a2, and then taking. But again, now it doesn't. Yeah,
it's putting it 39%. Yeah. So bishop bc3. Queen
I wouldn't play rook
c3.
c1. I don't know. I'll try to play rook h1 or h5. Yeah, h5 is also there. So yeah, h5 and g6 exactly right. Human idea. Second line, which is like very nice because
it's also putting in red focus, so we can focus that line. Yeah.
Really?
So basically,
is it
in red?
Wow.
I think when something is in red means it feels like this line is promising.
That's nice. That's very nice.
It's like not a stable line, meaning it doesn't know the clear evaluation.
I see.
Clear evaluation. Sorry.
Yeah, that's very nice.
So sort of interesting. Anyway, so this is but if you go back to general principles here, I think he played knight a6. You played bishop a2, right? Did you?
Yeah. Of course, we want to preserve this bishop. This bishop is over here.
He actually ended up playing something else.
Yeah, he got scared. He got scared. He decided to raid queens.
I see. So is it worthwhile looking at the looking at bishop c3 or not really?
No. Let's say queen a6. He decided to do that. There'll be some interesting moments as well. Yeah?
But queen a6, you can just take on a6 and have a.
Yeah, but on the other hand, open the b file, and we played a4, so our b2 pawn is weak. And so create some counterplay, but of course white is still better because we have better pawn structure at the center and the bishop pair. But it's not like we're winning or anything. Material is still equal, and black gets some little counterplay. Okay.
So queen a6. What happened? I'm really confused here.
Oh, we just take, I guess, because if we don't, he plays knight c4 and he blocks our bishop. And he
I think I just lost focus on the windows. Never mind. Oh. So you took. Okay, never mind. You took ba6.
I played rook c1 first. Okay, maybe.
Knight e2 looks okay. All right. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I think I played on the next move, but here rook c1. The idea is to improve the rook. Like, which piece can we improve? Like the first question to ask is like what our opponent wants. So here maybe he wants to play c5. Like I think this is his idea, or rook b8. And second question is what piece we can improve. And again, rook c1 comes naturally because we both develop the piece and we try to anticipate the c5 move. So we bring the rook to the open file.
Yeah, in a way, the computer also gives you a strange judgment because knight e2 looks interesting, but we're not worried about bishop takes e3.
I don't think there's much difference. Maybe just rook c1 is like the second line, but it was very small difference. Yeah. So he played knight b6, and now I mean, let's maybe not look at the notation. Can you maybe remove the notation or just?
How do you do that? Yeah, I can do that.
Just go up. Yeah. So what do you think here? So again, black wants something. I mean, he wants to play knight c4 perhaps and start jumping around with his knights, and it's annoying when knights start jumping.
Yeah, I mean, the most natural move that comes to head is b3, but I mean, not a bad, it's the simplest move that comes to head.
Right, b3 is the simplest move. I agree. Like we protect the pawn a4, we cover c4 square, but what's the repercussion of that move?
Yeah, the problem is bishop bishop starts looking silly.
Yeah, that's not nice. I mean, I think Karpov and Fish will be unhappy because I think that last squared bishop was their favorite piece in Ruy Lopez or like in Sicilian, I'm not sure. Right, so b3 is a safe move, but not very, not very principled continuation. What is a principled continuation?
Knight e2 looks interesting, but knight a4.
Yeah. Yeah, knight e2. What was played, right? I think.
Oh, hold on, I'll be right back. Sorry.
Hello? Just a second. Something happened?
No, I said I'll call you back, but now I'm resuming. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so knight e2, the problem is knight a4. I mean, you trade c6 and a4, and I don't know, it's not that clear. Okay.
So, yeah, so I decided the choice was between b3 and something else. And something else is something that like prevents knight c4, because again, knight c4 looks annoying because it attacks my squared bishop, and I certainly don't want to give up my squared bishop, because if I do, then d4 pawn becomes very weak. And so the other alternative is moving the knight, and perhaps like knight e2 makes more sense than anywhere else on the board. So knight e2, preventing.
Oh, you actually just played knight e2. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So why? Okay, knight e2. So knight e2, but then he can do knight e4.
I think he took, right?
Okay, yeah, okay, because that seems like the most natural move then.
Yeah. And what do we do here? Let's say in this position, our pawn is hanging. We can take on c6. So what do we do?
Take on c6, take on b2, rook b1, knight a4, rook. Yeah, so actually he cannot take on b2. So rook c6, he can't take on b2, but he can play rook c8.
Perhaps he can play rook c8, right? Good point, yeah, to fight for the open file. And if you play rook c1, maybe then he can take and play knight b2, right?
Yes. Yeah, right. And I think maybe should I make the move for, yeah, maybe I'll make the move rook c8, because now it's more and more likely you didn't play it. So rook a8, the problem also is if you take here, there's counterplay. He can do knight b2, rook c2. So maybe it feels like it's too much counterplay to allow.
I mean, white is still better here, I think, but maybe there was a stronger
continuation. Like I saw this line, if rook b1 hitting this, then there's rook.
Yeah, that's certainly, I don't want to allow that. Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah, and because hitting on e2. So it looks like at least there's counterplay. And the problem, at least what annoyed me slightly, is that we're losing, we're losing these weak pawns are like, getting traded for white strong pawns.
Exactly, it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, so a4 pawn is getting traded for the c6 pawn, and even if you take this and black gets counterplay and gets b2, like let's say simple, you take a6 and b2 without any counter tactics, then this is a good transaction for black.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what do we do then after knight e4? Because the pawn is attacked. And then otherwise he wants to play something like rook c8 and c5 and get rid of this weak pawn. And again, counterattack our d4 pawn. Hello?
I'm thinking. Yes.
Oh,
I like how you're saying hello and So see, the one thing is to protect this square. So you can't protect with the bishop. So like, and I can't play rook d1 because the knight b2 is coming at tempo.
Yeah, knight b1 will come with tempo, right?
Yeah, but let's say null move. Let's say here.
Yeah,
here,
I think knight e4 is something with.
Yeah, something like this can now be good for white, because then you can get this pawn.
No, why do we take that pawn? Can we maybe carry on with our initiative? What's the idea?
Bishop b3. Sorry, bishop b3. Bishop b3, knight b6, and now you can play rook a1 or rook c6.
Why rook a1? If we look at the last squared bishop on the diagonal, knight on f4, I mean, and we go back to our original idea of the king.
Oh God, yeah, okay.
Why it's not connected? I think it's just
play h5. Yeah,
I think it's like melody in music, right? It's like a flow. I mean, it just everything like asks for being h5 asks for being played in this position.
Yes, correct. Yes.
And then it just blows up the entire light square. So perhaps black should have played knight c3 instead of knight b6, at least to attack the bishop on a2, right? No, maybe not here. Yeah. But this is what happened again at f4. He didn't take the pawn, maybe perhaps because of this line, so he played something else. And what do you do after rook b8? I think he played rook b8 here.
Rook a8, right?
Yeah, I just want to. Yeah, so very interesting moment. Seems like such a silly move. Why? I mean, the pawn is not even attacked. What do we do? Just h5?
The most natural move in head is h5, but let's see.
So what is the first question we always ask ourselves in chess? Which is, again, like super simple question, but many people forget.
What are black's threats?
Yeah, what our opponent wants. Because most people, they focus on what they want to do, which is great, but in chess, it's not a good idea to be selfish. Like, you have to think for your opponent, because he also is selfish. He also wants to win, right? And so that's the first thing. That must be like sort of like automated in your mind. Like, whenever I play something, what does my opponent do? I mean,
even if you even when you calculate lines, let's say you calculate like some 5 moves in a row, even there, like on each move you think, what my opponent's next move? So here black played rook b8, and originally I don't understand what is the idea of this move. I mean, it doesn't win the pawn, doesn't create any threat. And what do we do? Do we just play h5 and think our opponent just played this move?
No, I found out the threat finally. God,
Good.
this is so lame, but it's good. I mean, it's really a good reminder that you know, you have to look for your opponent's threats.
Yes, you have to do that, right? Yes, bishop d2 most likely you saw, right?
Yeah, exactly. Bishop d2. Yeah. So
Right. That is right.
So I'm going to make a null move. h5. Now bishop d2. And at the beginning here, like what's wrong? But the rook is active. Bishop is attacking rook and bishop. And most importantly, if you take this bishop, then black has his follow up. Rook takes b2, hitting both bishops. So basically, one of those bishops black will capture at will if white defends neither. And so the problem is that black is suddenly very active. So here I can see maybe bishop rook f2, rook takes a2, and we've given black a lot of counterplay. It's possible that white can still play this position, but it was not necessary to give so much counterplay.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah. So what do? We just prevent this bishop d2 threat and just and play h5 in the next move.
Yeah. So I think for me, one natural idea would be rook f2, but maybe there's.
Yeah, I think was what I played rook f2. I think. Yeah. Just.
No, sorry.
Go back.
Yeah, rook f2, correct. Rook f2.
It seems very natural because we prevent bishop d2, and also in a way like protect the pawn on b2.
Yeah. I think that what I like about this being natural is that you're protecting this pawn. It's not really necessary, but it just feels good.
Also, I like white's coordination here. Like all pieces are doing something. Like there is some flow. I mean, like there's like some beauty in it. I don't know. Like perhaps this is just wrong opinion, but I like the knight on f4, like the bishop on it too, and they're like doing something. They both try to help white play h5 and g6. So they ideally positioned. So in chess, I mean, I often notice that like when beginners learn to play chess, and they often develop pieces, and they just develop pieces for the sake of developing pieces. It's because that's where their like first coaches tell them, I mean, like you have to develop pieces. But the point in chess is not about developing pieces; it's about developing in a way so that they are well coordinated. Because not always, like let's say, let's make an example in software engineering where you have tons of experience and I have like 0, right? One team of 10 people versus another team of 10 people seems like 10 people plus it should be equal, right? I mean, 10 people on that team and 10 people on that team, and let's say they have equal like similar qualifications, right? But one team might have like all like individualists, I mean, and that team perhaps will not go very far. I mean, like because I mean,
no,
like,
software engineering is deadly. Like software engineering is a team game. So if people are just thinking individually, the team is destined to fail.
That's what I'm saying, right? The equal qualification between teams. Let's say they're just pretty much equal. I mean, right? But one team, there is no teamwork. Another one, there is teamwork. So same in chess, I think, right? I mean, like pieces just don't care about other pieces, and just one bishop goes to a4 just to do something on that diagonal, and the bishop goes to h4 to do something there. And just some random example, right? And there's no coordination between those. Although there might be positions where there is coordination between bishop a4 and bishop h4, of course. And let's take an example where those two bishops coordinate. Let's say it's bishop d4 and bishop e4, and they try to create attack on both sides, like bishop upon a7, bishop on h7. So hopefully that comparison with software engineering makes sense. I mean, like again.
No, I think that this actually, you raised a very interesting point here. The point is that when people play chess, in fact, this problem is not even there only at the beginner level. I would even say up to master level, even FIDE master level, you would see people sometimes not playing very coordinated chess. And at the grandmaster level, you're less likely to see this. And I think the point here is that, playing non-coordinated chess is like, just basically you're just waiting to get beaten, because if your opponent's pieces are coordinated, they're more likely to participate in several logical plans. Whereas if you're just doing like a one-off random plan on the side of the board, and the rest of your pieces can't participate, like here for black's position, I feel the same. I feel like black is like able to attack b2. The bishop is sort of a bystander. He was useful for one tactic of bishop d2, but I don't think that's going to happen anymore. Not clear what this knight on d6 is doing, and again, not clear what this rook is doing. Maybe the only really coordinated black piece is the rook on b8 trying to aim at b2. But I think the point is, if you play chess without being coordinated, without having strong coordination amongst your pieces, you're not going to, your strategy is going to be weak, and your opponent is going to have a big advantage.
But again, that's something that just cannot be learned overnight. Right? It just takes, I guess, years of experience to understand why. I mean, like developing the queen, like let's say to c7, not d7 makes more sense in certain positions, and in some positions like to d7, not c7 makes sense. So this is actually what makes chess hard, right? And just I think there's no shortcut of learning.
Yeah, I think one thing is for people, maybe they can at least start appreciating these things. You can appreciate that, hey, the bishop is doing something useful. There's tactics around here. There's tactics around h5, gh5, g6. And this rook is actually doing something useful, like protecting the whole second rank. And this rook on c1 is useful because it's hitting the pawn. So just appreciating that, all of white's pieces are participating in at least one plan compared to black pieces, that I think can go a long way. Once you see this, then you can think a bit about, hey, next game we play, are my pieces coordinated on a plan, or they're just doing one-off plans like black in this case, just hitting this pawn, one move ago and now doing nothing useful.
Right. So the game actually, I think, didn't last long. I mean, like here, I think white is better, much better, despite being like 1 or 2 pawns down. I think I don't know how many pawns, 1 pawn down, right? But yeah, my pawn didn't manage to put resistance, and perhaps it's not so easy. I mean, because I guess maybe we were mutual time trouble, and it's just easier to play with white. I know my next moves. I don't have to think. It's just I can play them by hand. With for black, is very unclear. How can I stop h5 and g6? Because after that, the position just blows up, and there's always threats on the diagonal. Like black king becomes exposed, and this is something very tricky. Yeah, I would have very hard time on like defending this position as well with black.
Yeah, no, I think the point about your pawn disadvantage is white is down a pawn, but white has no desire to get the pawn back anytime soon. Just play for an active plan. Who cares about a pawn? And these double pawns anyway are not going to stay forever. So the black's pawn structure is so bad that I even feel like if you take this pawn, this helps black because black can at least try to trade a pair of rooks.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, better not to give him time to, or like, because if I take on c6, exactly, black gets the open file and he gets a tempo. So better just ignore it for now and focus on weakening the king.
So should we go forward? Or
Okay.
Yeah,
I think forward.
Oh, knight b5. Okay, that's good. At least he's attacking something. He's attacking
right.
b4 pawn.
Again, what do? Do we protect the pawn or do we go forward? Okay. That's a general question, of course. Sometimes we just need to start calculating things, right? Because I mean, chess is a strategical game with elements of tactic, right? It's possible to say blah, 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 but at some point you just can't blah, blah. You have to calculate, right? So here, perhaps there is not much to calculate, but this is like a general point to the audience. I mean, like we've been talking general concepts a lot during like this lesson. However, sometimes we get into positions, let's say like in some crazy Sicilian with attack and all pieces hanging, then it's hard to make general judgments. You just have to sit and calculate. And this is what also makes chess very, very hard, because calculating under time pressure is not easy. I mean, and especially when there are a lot of move candidates for both sides on each move. And in computer science, we can represent it as a tree, I think, right? So the starting position will be the root, and there would be like child nodes, which would be like moves, right? And there'll be a lot of like branches, and for humans very difficult to calculate, and sometimes for engines as well. If I'm not mistaken, you know much more because you contribute to Stockfish, but this is the way it is, right?
No, I think I totally agree with you actually, because I think human chess and computer chess are different. And for a computer, you can calculate everything. Here, I think human have to use some intuition. And I think the intuition is telling me, hey, play h5 and g6, because who cares even if he takes a d4 pawn? That's not as important as your threats. I don't know if that's insufficient.
I think what I play, I think so, because I think so.
Hopefully you played h5. Okay, thankfully. Otherwise, and I think the good thing is that if he takes on d4, I think you can just take on g6. So I think he's more or less forced to take on h5, and I think you can just play g6 here. G6.
Yeah.
Okay, and now he plays knight d4. Okay, so obviously he's not going to.
But again, his pieces create no threats. I mean, again, this bishop on a2 is still unmatched. There is no way to close this diagonal. I think this bishop is just clearly white's like strongest piece here. No, worse more than.
I feel like you can just take on f7, take on d4, and then take on e6.
Yeah, that's what I think. How I won the game.
Okay, let's see. So king here, take here.
You just
knight e6. Okay, knight e6 I think is stronger. Yeah, knight e6.
Yeah.
This is actually important. This is for the sake of like understanding stronger players. In this kind of position, bishop e6 looks natural, but because you're checking the king. But knight e6 is better because you're hitting the rook and there's a latent threat. Always latent threats are more scary in practice, and in this position, even objectively stronger because you're threatening to take the rook. You're threatening maybe knight d8. You're threatening more and more annoying things.
Knight c5, knight a4. I think what happened in the game.
Knight c5, knight c5, and a4. Wow, then it's like a super knight. So now rook d2. Oh, but then you just do knight c5, knight a4.
Yeah, exactly. That's how he game. It was not so easy to protect, and he just lost this way.
Yeah, knight a4. Yeah, I feel like there's not much left in this position. Oh, okay. There's still some tricks. Black has pawn, so you have to make sure that you're stopping its counterplay. So
right.
c5. Yeah, so this is actually interesting.
But it's lost because he has like 2 pawns, but they're doubled, right? So it's like pretty much he has 1 pawn, and now no counterplay. I mean, except like h pawn, but again, it can easily be stopped. So I think it's very easily technically winning. I think we just need to bring the knight somehow into the game.
Yeah, I was thinking knight c3. The problem is.
Yeah, it doesn't work right now, but that's what we want to do, right?
And take on c3. So maybe king e3, knight c3. I guess you can also probably take on take on c5 looks scary, but
maybe I didn't remember what I played actually here. Rook g1 I played. It seemed like just attack the pawn, and black has to play something like king f6.
Oh yeah, this is way stronger. So so let's say take king f6. So let me see. So here, how do we get knight into game?
So we can't do it right away, but it seems like what I played against makes sense even now. F4 with the idea of e5 again.
F4, e5, yeah.
Trying to get control of dark squares because we don't want the black bishop to come to e5 and block out.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that I didn't.
And g5, right? So we don't. F4 makes sense again and creates a threat.
Yeah. Now white is threatening e5 and rook g7. Actually, no, not yet e5 because king f5. So maybe white is just okay. So now rook d8.
Yeah, and bishop d5 and let's see the black resign.
Yeah, bishop d5. Just block the bishop. Exactly. Yeah. I was thinking the same.
Yeah, the game ended pretty much earlier after knight a4. Yeah. So it was another example about the bishop pair and about like weakening squares of opponents missing bishop. So black had dark squared bishop, and we wanted to weaken the light squares, and that's why we played h4, h5, and then g6 and tried to weaken the a2, g8 diagonal. So a bit similar to the previous game. Again, light bishop was the strongest piece, and it's similar here. Perhaps that's why I'm so biased for playing this knight h4 line, because I get the light squared bishop and bishop pair. So I don't know.
Interesting. No, out of curiosity, do you feel that still this is one of the strongest lines for you playing white? Like you have a strong cross record?
I think 22 is the main theory, but everything should be equal. Knight h4 objectively doesn't get advantage. Nothing gets advantage in chess, right? So. But for me,
that's actually an interesting point because I guess both sides study, and so nothing really gives you a strong advantage.
Again, I just play without just on the old baggage. Just playing these games, checking them with the computer, and hoping that I would remember some ideas during my future games. So, but I don't have any deep analysis, move by move. This is what strong players usually do. Because again, to me, it seems a very simple just get the bishop pair and try to play from there. But of course, if someone analyzes and plays some concrete line, bishop h5, g5, then perhaps I will not be so comfortable because I have to calculate. I cannot use general knowledge. Okay. So.
Yeah, I think what I'm fascinated by is the fact that general knowledge can serve you so much or serve you so well. So that's quite fascinating.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
So so I think I think we spent a lot of time. I think next we'll maybe resume next video. Thanks a lot for your feedback, your presentation, and especially going over games where you showed mastery of the two bishops. And I think this will help probably everyone watching the video.
Okay, thanks everyone, and see you in the next
video. Everyone, remember, please give us any comments. You can post any comments if you're interested in other material, and do like our videos so we can end up posting more.
Right. Thank you.